Okay. Welcome to Unbiased on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining. We have Von Galt back with us. Let me get you in here and get you unmuted. How's it going, Von?
Good. Hi, guys.
You enjoying your stay-at-home orders there up in the, let's see, you're in the Pacific
Washington.
Northwest,
Yeah.
Washington? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in Seattle, Washington. Actually, I'm in the epicenter when it first started
Right?
at Everett, the first quote case. But it's been interesting. It's been Groundhog's Day every day.
Yeah. It's so funny how, like, when you mess your schedule up, it's so hard to keep up with the days. If I didn't have the shows on the certain days, I would just
Mm.
be completely lost.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. It Monday? I don't know. But you know what? I have started to get really dressed up. I'm wearing my prom outfits to go to the grocery store because it's a special occasion. My husband and I, we do rock, paper, scissors. Who gets to go to the store? It's a big family excursion to go drive through. And I am doing QHHT sessions, but I'm adhering to the recommendations for my city ordinance, and I'm wearing these wonderful, beautiful masks. So I'm playing the game of this reality and trying to have fun at the same time. So
While repping your team there.
yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, I see the young people really digging it. They're like getting into the whole fashion of it and stuff. So
Oh,
everybody seems to be making the best of it. So I
you
think we're
know.
moving through just fine.
Yeah, it'll get by faster the more we can make light of it and just kind of have fun. My daughter seems to think it's just like the funnest thing. She has a Frozen and a Minnie Mouse face mask that a
Uh,
lady made locally that we bought from. And I tell you, all these like elderly ladies that are sewing are making a nice, handsome side income during this time.
that's amazing.
Yeah, I had a lady who I ordered Seahawks and Supersonics masks from my best friend and her husband and some people further south of me, and she was saying that she's making more money during retirement making these beautiful masks for people than she did when she was working. So
That's funny because actually several people I've talked to now said that they were in the restaurant business. They're actually making more money on unemployment than they were at work. So it's like,
yeah, and then making the mask to have fun with it, and I'm telling you, and she was saying that she gets so many orders for the children's mask, for the themed children's mask, Disney mask, etc., Avengers, etc., that she's got back orders from the children's mask more than she does the adult mask sometimes, and everybody wants to rush ship as soon as possible because the children cannot wait to get it because they want to
right,
play around with it. So it's been it's been interesting. So the reality has some fun in it.
right.
So
Well, I think here there's no city ordinance about having to wear a mask. It's just recommended, and most businesses you go to, a lot of the workers aren't worried about it. They're not wearing any mask or anything, and so I'd say maybe a third of the people at the most at any one point you might see it might be a third of the people there, but most of the time it's you might see one person with a mask, around or whatever.
mhm,
So it's
mhm.
really not too crazy,
Yeah,
quiet.
yeah, it's been very quiet. The things that has here in Seattle, the thing that the pandemic has done is actually I think everybody has a different perspective of how they're going to ride the wave, but I see a lot of positives. A lot of the hospitals have gone virtual.
Hmm.
It's brought down the cost of medical because it's virtual. And they brought back quite a bit of retired physicians who can consult with you straight from their home using Zoom or any other app that they have. So that's really helped them out a lot. A lot of people are embracing work from home and they're learning, and people are able to work-life balance a lot more.
Hmm.
Traffic has just gone wonderful. There's hardly any traffic accidents or road rage or anything else like that. And for the most part, yeah, everybody's just doing their thing. They're being more neighborly,
Yeah.
keeping in contact with each other. Just waving from a distance, having people's phone numbers. It's been really positive for the most part. Yeah, that we're kind of sheltering in. We still go out.
Hmm.
There's nothing against going out. People still go out. They go walk around the neighborhood. They go to the drive-through more often than they would just to dine in.
Right.
A lot of the restaurants have moved into dining option, and I wouldn't be surprised if many of them scaled down operations to be just, for the most part, delivery. And delivery drivers have all been really good.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positive outcomes out of this in my area, and all the grocery stores for the most part, except for your huge warehouse suppliers, they're fully stocked, and there's nobody's in shortage of anything.
Right. Yeah, like here, I
Yeah.
think hand sanitizer and sanitizing products that, like the wet wipe things and things like that are like hard to get a hold of still. But,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of because everybody like ran out at one time to disinfect everything. So,
Yeah, I was talking to somebody on Etsy, and she's like, my husband moved away from making moonshine to making hand sanitizers.
it's probably a good thing. That's a good move. If you've got the stuff to do it, you might as well.
People were very candid with me, so it was really funny. I was like, I might have to buy and test a bottle out of your hand sanitizer. So because we carry some with our in our bags and so forth. But you know, this has been this has been going around. This bug, COVID-19, has been going around since the cold and flu season here in Seattle.
Right. In
And a lot of
December last year, even, huh?
No, like the Seattle flu study reported cases of it out of, I think, over 1,200 flu cases, and it was reported by our local news. So many people in this area are
Hmm.
familiar with it, but back in like November,
Oh, okay. Then it's
November,
the COVID
December.
19. It's the newer Corona.
No, that's why they call it COVID-19. COVID 2019
Right.
is when it showed up in 2019. It's not
Right.
COVID-20.
Right. Right. Right.
So you gotta stop and like think about the naming. Like there's a reason why they named it what they named it,
Oh yeah.
was when it came out. um so we won't really know for sure until the antibody tests come out in a mass scale. My husband and I are really open to the antibody test. We really want to find out if that funky flu was it.
Hmm.
And we'll see what happens and just kind of played by ear after that.
Right. So you guys think
Yeah.
it might have already moved through your area? You might already be immune to it already then, huh?
Yeah, that's and most people, there isn't as many cases. I mean, most of the hospitals are very short, or very light. There isn't very many cases. Now, I didn't say that there is no cases. I know people who have gotten um, COVID, and they've had serious recovery issues with it, and
Hmm.
they needed a ventilator. But in a scale, it's very, very small.
Right.
So you don't take it lightly.
Hmm.
Everybody up here in Seattle, I talk to my neighbors, and they talk to their children. Everybody, they have their, okay, if we caught it and we happen to have the unfortunate luck of not recovering easily, um, you know, we have our emergency plan. We know our healthcare providers numbers. We know how we're going to do quarantine. We know how we're going to allocate taking care of the children, et cetera, et cetera. We know our FMLA in Washington State and emergency FMLA. So, everybody is very familiar, and they pass information around. So a lot of people are very familiar that if they had the worst case scenario, they would be able to adapt and work with it. But for the most part, it's been very, very small cases
Hmm.
as
And we've
compared
both
to
been
other
actually
places.
we've both been actually getting through our sessions that, unless it's really part of your experience, you're not going to experience it. You're not going to like die from this if that wasn't part of your plan. So, not to be in fear
Exactly.
about it. If that does happen, then that's what you agreed on, and there's nothing to be fearful about. So either way, it's
Exactly.
just relax about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, because in Washington, the nursing home that had many of that had bad ventilation. And I
Mm-hmm.
have friends who have family members who were in that, and they survived. But and the gentleman who quote unquote had the first case in Everett, Washington, in my city, he was in his 30s. He survived. So many people survive, and as they're doing antibody tests, they're finding out a lot more people have had it in this area longer, and we don't really know how long they've had it and how many people have had it, how many people have recovered and thought it was just some funky flu bug that they had. So we don't really know. So, until we get all the information out, it's best not to speculate or come to conclusion about anything until we know, all the information. So I just play along with it. In my QHHT sessions that I've had two last week, and I, am continuing to get some throughout the month as well during the pandemic, and I see more happening. What's happening is interesting is the ones cause I typically get star seeds and indigos, and the ones that I get, they will call in their session wonder, I was never interested in metaphysics before. I was never interested in parallel reality, sacred geometry, all this kind of um, stuff was never an interest to me. I just all of a sudden decided and woke up one day and it was an interest a week and a half ago or a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And it's a recurring thing. So something's going on with the Schumann resonance, I think it is. I don't know
Yeah.
where it was last time, but more people are waking up and they are wanting to get some of this information and kind of move along their path. But in the sessions that I have, the recurring thing that I get when I talk to the subconscious, and many of them ask about the current pandemic as one of their questions, or they ask about um,
Like
what's the
elites and things
deal.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing that continues to come back over and over again from the subconscious is if it is meant to be your experience, you will have that experience for your own personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like somebody who has cancer. No two people who gets cancer are going to recover the same exact way, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to come out on the other side, two different people.
Mm-hmm.
So you are going to get your experience that you're supposed to get. At the same time, you do have human bodies. So just because you're not going to be, maimed does not mean you go walk in front of a car.
Right.
Okay, so you do have bodies, and you should be respectful of the human bodies and the healthy bodies that you have. So, take some respective precautions, but don't go overboard. And then the other thing, a lot of the subconscious say is, you know, the people who are going to this is fatal for, it was part of their life plan,
Mm-hmm.
and they will have conversations if they want to. They can have conversations with that spirit and that soul on the other side in the sessions as well, to clarify why or whatever the questions they have. But the other thing that the subconscious really wants people to know, and what I get in the sessions recently, is that people really need to take control of where they want their life to move forward to. And this is a pivot point in their life. So, lay off the conspiracies, because yes, they do exist, just like other horrible things happen in the world exist. But you don't spend too much time focusing and getting inundated on other horrific things that happen around the world. But you're going to spend all that time on certain conspiracy theories, and they may exist, but they don't really affect your personal sphere of influence that much. They didn't make you marry that person. They didn't make you take that job. They didn't make you have all those children, et cetera, et cetera. So most of the things that happen in most people's lives are
Mm-hmm.
their decisions of how they're going to walk this journey. And these other conspiracies, although um, they have some truth to them, don't have that much power in many people's lives, and the subconscious continue to reinforce that you create your own reality and you manifest your next experience. So focus on being the best version of you, and less on these other things that really have no bearing in your life.
Yeah,
So
that's actually what came through in my sessions, and it was like saying that they're important wake up calls, but they're
mhm.
stepping stones. So if you kind of get stuck in it, then it's sort of working backwards. I mean, because if you get stuck there, then it's like it's holding you back. You're feeding it. You're putting energy in it, like you were saying before. So you're actually
Yeah.
feeding into what you don't want. You know, so
Exactly, exactly. It's just like the conversation we had about the analogy of the pothole.
right.
So you're driving down the road of life, and there's this big sign that says, "Watch out for huge sinkhole ahead." Okay, but you can still get around it. So we just gotta take the detour and walk around it. But instead of taking a detour or slowly going around it and moving on to get to your next destination that you're working on getting to, you decide to stop and look at it and inspect it. Your car goes into the sinkhole. You're stuck. You got to get roadside assistance. You got to call everybody else in the whole world, and now you're stuck there. I mean, you put it on Facebook, and on the story evolves. So that sinkhole was not really supposed to be part of your experience, but you just made it part of your experience. And that's really what spending all your time in these other concepts do to your life, is they kind of derail you from the time and energy you're supposed to be spending on bettering your life and yourself.
But you know, on the deeper level, isn't it funny because you can look at that and you can see how you got stuck there because you needed to get stuck there in a way. You needed to work through some stuff. You know what I mean? You needed to learn to like let go of that. So even at those
Yeah.
times like that, you know, it's like we're just learning. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. The first pothole, maybe the 70s. I mean, there's this point where I know people like that. They just can't stop. They just can't drive by a car crash.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can get caught in these cycles, and that's why we see stuff come up over and over and over again. You know, and I've had people tell me they were like, how have you like progressed so fast through in this period of your life?" And it was like just realizing there's a lesson there and not being the victim. Because once you
Yep.
realize it's a lesson, then you can learn what you need to learn and move on. But as soon as you get stuck in the whole victim thing, like why does this keep happening? Why is this? And then you're sort of in more of the victim. Why is this happening to me? Rather than what is this teaching me? What opportunity or experience should I
Hmm.
be learning from this? You know what I mean? There's like
Yeah.
a
It's
shift in
just
perspective.
exactly, exactly. And that's really what it all comes down to. It comes down to consciousness. It comes down to your consciousness, and the subconscious consciousness, and it comes down to, okay, what do you want to experience next? And based on what you want to experience next, where do you want to focus your intentions and your energy on? Because where your energy and your actions and your intentions are focused on is where you're going to go next, what you're going to manifest into your next best experience. So it's all about shifting your perspective, shifting yourself and your energy into something else that you would rather prefer.
Hmm.
So I had done an experiment during this shelter at home, and I don't know about you, but I am having quite a bit of Mandela effects on a personal level. I actually started counting them.
Oh,
So I've
really?
had, yeah, I've had maybe, I think last time I counted, I think it was like 10 or 12 personal Mandela effects, and it's just about shifting a perspective on people. I just accepted, some people. That's just what. Hey, you want to do that? That's perfectly fine. I accept it, no problem. It's not my responsibility to save you. You're gonna learn on your own. I wish you the best. Move on. And the next day, it's a completely different parallel person
Yeah.
that is responding. And I told my friends, and some of my friends have called me and said, Vaughn, I have parallel parents too. And it's a while. So I'll give you some examples. So um my best friend and I both worked with a coworker for many, many years. And this coworker works in a different shift than I do. One very recently, this person messaged me on Messenger to say hi because she just shifted to the same shift. And I said, "Oh, I really, when did you start? And I got all this information, and she gave me the exact start date and all this information. And I said, that's very interesting because remember so and so that we work with? She has record of your conversation of when you started this exact shift 2 years ago.
Wow.
And she's like, no. And so the parallel person is laughing at the evidence of her parallel self.
Right.
And then myself and my coworker are laughing at the evidence that we have of the parallel person. It's just phenomenally, it's just funny.
It is.
So, and something else, say same other things happen with another friend of mine who reached out to me, and her parents are parallel parents because she says she grew up and she knows everything about her parents careers, and she knows every little trinket in the shadow box of her father. Well, her father is a state representative in Idaho back in the day, and she finally accepted her parents for their viewpoints, political viewpoints, and everything else. Stopped trying to convince them otherwise, and just said, you know what, you guys do what you do. I'm moving on. Then all of a sudden, she moved and visited them, and her father showed her a shadow box that she has never seen in her life ever, and she knows everything in that room and in that mantle. And it was a gift from a guard of JFK when he was shot. One of the
Hmm.
guards ended up going into a political career, but he worked with her father and gave him that gift. And she was floored because that's not something you're never going to tell your
Oh,
children.
right, right, for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
like I'm best friends with the one of the bodyguards during JFK's shooting. So
Right.
it's something that it's something that how can you not ever tell that?
Right.
And so she was just kind of floored by that. And he said, that's always been in my office this whole time. Haven't I told you this before? And she's like, no, I would remember this. So another example of parallel parents, and she just started laughing at it. And then this is something Jane Goodall, I think it is.
Hmm.
Okay, she's a conservationist with monkeys and just ecosystem habitat. So she's running some fundraiser. I don't know, it's this month or next month, like Jane Goodall. Well, many of my friends remember posting about her death about a year or so ago, and she's still alive.
Jane Goodall's alive now, huh?
Jane Goodall is alive and running and doing a fundraiser
I think
for
she
the
died
ecos.
since I woke up in 2017. It seems like I heard
Uh-huh.
about her dying.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't recognize the name, sounded familiar at the time. So when the news came out about it, I'm like, "Who is that?" They're like, "You haven't seen the movie about the monkeys or documentary or
Uh-huh.
something?" I was like, maybe." And they're like, "They use the clips everywhere, so you probably seen it and didn't realize it." And so yeah, that's weird. That
Yeah,
anybody
she's
else remember her
alive.
passing away in the last couple of years? Because I definitely remember that. Because that's
Yeah.
why I know who she is because she passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
I
weird.
I follow conservation, so yeah, she's doing a fundraiser. It's a great fundraiser. If you're really into that, definitely join up her fundraiser. But in the other reality that I was in, she had passed away, and many of my friends had posted condolences about her life achievements. And so this is a parallel Jane Goodall.
Wow.
So,
Well, that's actually a perfect segue. So you've been taking advantage of this time at home. You got your book just about ready to release. Do you have a date yet? Just next month or two?
oh, it's interesting because everybody deals with pandemics differently, and writing is my meditation.
Mm-hmm.
My husband has been making quite a bit of music during
Yep.
during this as well, but writing is my thing, and so I finally had the time to do it. But I don't have as much time because now I watch my children 24/7, which is wonderful,
Right.
but it's Groundhog's Day every day, and it is definitely a challenge, to watch the kids as they're running around. making a havoc of my office and
Yep.
taking my things as I'm doing work. They're taking my mouse because it fits whatever game they're playing with. So it's been an interesting challenge when I break off and from work and write a little bit more into my book. But at this point, I am done with it. It is actually I have it in front of me.
Yeah,
It is okay.
there it is.
So it's
Wow.
almost a 400 page. My daughter drew all over it. So I find my cliff notes and I have drawings all over, and so I'm real.
Well,
Um,
it's nice to have a live-in illustrator for your book, right?
right, right. My yeah, right. My daughter will draw on my whiteboard that I use with QHHT clients and make a drawing for customers or for clients that come
Hmm.
in. And sometimes it is kind of ironic because the last one I had, she drew a bunch of vortexes and galaxies and stars, and a person in a spaceship. And the person that that came for the session, his 3 or 4 lifetimes was that he was a galaxy and traveling the vortexes and a space explorer.
Wow.
So it's really kind of funny.
Yeah.
I do shelter my children from a lot of stuff, just because there's interesting people out there. So that's a nice way to say it. But yeah, the book is almost 400 pages, and I am proofreading it. And really, what I'm waiting on is I'm waiting for my book cover illustrator. She lives in Milan, Italy,
Mm.
and she has been in a lockdown for a while. Everybody knows about Milan, Italy, and she was working on it here there, and then of course things happened in Milan with COVID, and so there's been some personal trials and reflections with family members and other things happening in her city. So it's taken a little bit longer for us to complete the projects just because COVID life has happened. But and
Divine
it's
timing, though, right?
yeah, right. It is. And but the thing is that she's a wonderful gal, and she is doing my cover has Kuan Yin, which is the female Buddha, Kuan Yin, and she is in a mandala, and it's just really beautiful illustration that she's doing for me. And when she's done with it, then we'll put it all together, and then we'll send you guys maybe at the next show, hopefully it will be published, and then we can I can give the link. And usually Amazon lets me do 5 days promo where I give my book away for free.
Oh,
So
wow.
I always give my book away for free, every year for 5 days. And I spend my own money to promote and push it out on Facebook through the world
Hmm.
to help the world out. And whoever gets it gets it. Whoever reads it is supposed to read it. And then I just sit back and see what happens, because most of the time I don't like to be in the limelight, and I don't really like to attract a lot of attention. I just like to do the work and get it out there. So
I completely get it, you know?
yeah. So, anyways, it's gonna come out, but this is a sneak preview of what's inside the book. And when the book comes out, you can read the 375 pages with all the scientific information and get yourself down the rabbit hole.
Awesome. We're really looking forward to it. So let's dive in deep here. You got a
Yes.
PowerPoint for us?
Yes. So, do you see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up now. I'm going to make it the big window here. Let's see. Um, try to anyway. Let's see what this one does here. There we go. Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, you're all set.
All right. So, Buddhist Mandalas explore parallel realities with sacred geometry. So that's the book title. Okay. So if you're not aware of this fine gentleman, this is Richard Buckminster Fuller. and he's the inventor of the icosahedron dome structure that you're probably familiar with. It's very iconic. So he
Hmm.
has this wonderful saying that he said in one of his lectures, which I took note of. And I love watching the old reels of Bucky going over these lectures. So he says, "You don't have to know anything to be negative. You have to know a great deal to be positive. All the great governments and all the great religions and all the great businesses would find it devastating to have man be a great success. They want suffering so you can rely on their leadership. I know we can change this, but it depends on the new young world." So Bucky doesn't really care about the adults. He's only caring about the kids of the now.
You're right.
So it's just so funny. So at his time, it was a lot of his concepts were kind of foreign, and people speculated on kind of where his mindset was, but he was ahead of his time. And the children of now and the children of the near now is really what he is getting that message to. So some notations about Richard Buckminster Fuller. He had his spiritual awakening in his early 30s when he had no money and had stress of supporting a family. So he almost committed suicide, and thank goodness that he didn't. Got over that, and then as soon as he got over his suicidalness, he had a moment of awareness where he basically had his first spiritual awakening. And so after that awakening, he started to develop the dome structure architecture from understanding the metaphysics science of sacred geometry that he designed based off Archangel Metatron's cube. So the geodesic dome behind you that you see there, that is sacred geometry. If you see those intersection points and you look closer at the image, you'll see the circles. You'll start seeing the flower of life.
Oh yeah, I can see it in there.
So
Amazing.
everybody look at the picture in close detail, and instead of focusing on the triangles, intersecting triangles, look behind there and you'll start seeing the flower of life.
Yeah. Actually,
It's
it's at
architecture.
the points of the triangles are looks like the center of the circles, I guess.
So keep inspecting that, people. I'm going to continue reading a little bit more about
Okay.
Bucky's wonderful contribution to 5D. So the message that was mapped out in the form of conclusive math, which we know now as vortex math, but at his time, just math, is depicted in sacred geometry, which is an infinite, unbreakable truth in nature, which is that everything exists in unity, harmony, and oneness. Okay, so all of nature in exists in harmony and oneness, and people are working to exist in nature in harmony, unity, and oneness. And that's really the profound information that he discovered from studying sacred geometry and putting that into his architecture, which really stood him out in his time. And then in his latter years, after a successful career as a pioneering sacred geometry architect, he spent much of his time lecturing with the famous Indian yogic philosopher Maharishi. So he might sound familiar to you. Maharishi did over 60 different studies on meditation and consciousness and how meditation changes reality. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But one of his peers was Maharishi. And in that time of the lectures, he lectured to children of America to find enlightenment within in order to reinforce social responsibility and unity consciousness in creation of advanced technology that may bring an end to global human suffering. He encouraged adopting, again, good meditation and energy balancing practices like yoga to help the children of the future live in a higher frequency and move forward in physically, manifesting the next stage of the human experience in an energy of unity consciousness. Now, Buckminster Fuller, this is like in like the 50s and 60s, people, and you say that kind of stuff back in the 50s and 60s, and they're going, "What are you smoking?" But for us now, we're like, "Yeah, unity consciousness, we got that 5D, sure, no problem." You know, working with social responsibility in technology so that we don't destroy the earth and each other, and live in harmony in how we create technology and use technology responsibly. I mean, those were things that he was talking about before technology became a thing. Okay, so he was really, really ahead of his time, and he was talking to us now, 50, 60 or so years ago. So again, everybody, look at the dome one more time before you go to the next slide, and you look past those triangles, you will see all the intersecting flower of life.
So you had mentioned vortex math. I want to bring out that. So this would be right around the time of Tesla, then, right? Let's see, because he
Um,
died in the 40s or 50s, I think.
no, I no, he Tesla. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tesla died before
Oh,
Buckminster
43.
Fuller. Yeah, yeah. Um, but so he lived quite a long time, Buckminster, and did a lot of university lecture circuits in his latter years. I mean, he was mostly interested. He'd already made his money. He made his career. He was just interested in talking to um, the youth.
Hmm.
You know,
Very good
before
work, though. That's
but,
very detailed for the time. I mean, wow, look at that.
yeah. I mean, who's talking about unity consciousness in the 60s?
Right. I found a lot of information like that, like the whole Saint Germain, I am discourse and stuff. I never seen that, and it's like you hear it, and it's like it was from the 1930s or something. It's like I cannot believe they were talking about this back then. You know.
Yeah, it's trendy now, and we think we're like really cool because we're getting into it. These
We're
cats
so
had a
late
long
to the
time
party.
ago. We're so late to the party. We like we're not the first wave.
Right.
So they were the first wave. They paved it. So, anyways, but really good stuff. So let's go to the next slide.
All
I
right.
love Bucky. He's my favorite.
There we go.
All right. Little lag there. Okay, so what is sacred geometry? Okay, and again, everybody look at the picture, because by the end of this, you're going to get really good at studying art history in Buddhist mandalas. And I did a little bit of a minor in art history, so this is all up my angle. So, what is sacred geometry? Do not follow the ideas of others, but learn to listen to the voice within. Your body and mind will become clear, and you will realize the unity of all things. So that is from the Zen Buddhist master teacher Dogen, and he actually calibrates really, really high in the scale of consciousness. I think he was like a 8 or so hundred, really high up there.
Oh
But
wow, that's way up there.
all he ever did, all Dogen ever did, was talk about the unity of all things. Everything is in sync. Everything is a manifestation of you. And the people who are highly conscious and highly spiritual, they get to a point where they don't no longer belong to any organization. And so now it's like, okay, the challenge is, how do you travel through different realities and manifest better and greater experiences for yourself when there are a few teachers left for you to study from. You have to start practicing what you know within yourself. So you get to that part of Zen, and you get to that part in your level of consciousness, and it becomes a little bit more difficult, because you don't have you kind of just open up the yellow book and find a church that you can go to. So, and this is where the challenge is, and this is where you see other people who are doing it really can help you craft your reality. So this is what Dogen is really, really popular for, is crafting the reality based on the universal one mind. So getting a little bit esoteric when we go into Buddhism, but it
Mm-hmm.
will all make sense because it's all scientific. So the structure, so sacred geometry, what it is the structure of platonic solids that are the makeup of all physical beings. Okay, all physical beings are made up of sacred geometry, and I will show you that. And every human being is an energy being made up of a mandala with a halo around the head and a halo around the body. So the energy that comes and emits out of your head has a frequency, but the energy that is emitted out from within your heart has 5 times greater frequency than the energy out of your head. That's why there's two halos.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead and again inspect this mandala. Every mandala, Buddhist mandala, will have the same structure for all the different Buddhas in the different realms.
Okay, I see.
So, so just, so I'm going to keep on talking as you guys study this and get familiar with it.
I'm kind of interested in the way that the two halos overlapping. There's the one around the body and the one around the head, and they together kind of make a Mandelbrot. I don't know if you're going to get into that, but
Mm.
that's pretty interesting.
That's actually in book 2, Notable Symbols. I
Yeah.
had to stop the book after 400 pages.
Oh, right, right, right. Okay. Even the Buddha head looks like the Mandelbrot design. That's kind of
Yep,
interesting that it's
yep.
like
It's a
embedded all in throughout here. That whole fractal pattern that you see repeating throughout nature's art,
exactly.
if you will. You know.
Exactly. We're all Mandelbrots. We're just smaller versions of bigger versions.
Yep,
Uh,
exactly. It's the fractal nature of our reality that comes through. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So anyways, there's two halos, and then a person's aura field has a level of energy that it emits. So the higher the level of consciousness, the higher the energy field of the person. So two people
Mm-hmm.
may look alike, but their energy field is completely different.
Mm.
Okay. So don't be fooled by two people thinking that they're exactly alike, because you can take them apart and put them in a certain room and you'll get a totally different experience. One person will attract more people, will elevate more people, everybody will feel better, things will just start popping, conversations will never end, everybody's just very creative, and the other person not so much. That's the field that affects other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have tested this out my whole life, because I my family was poor growing up, Section 8, yada yada yada, welfare,
Mm-hmm.
food stamps, etc. And throughout my whole life, all my friends were similar kind of situation, not very wealthy, and they all have grown up to be extremely successful in their careers. So, and everybody that I come across after talking to them and hanging out with them, not doing anything special, again becomes more successful. So, I think it is attributed to the energy field, and I've met other people who has even stronger energy fields, and it's amazing the connections that people around them make just by being in that circle. So oftentimes people will go to a master teacher just to be close to their energy, just
Mm.
to get touched by their energy and just get that little zing.
Right.
So they've proven this in consciousness study that everyone has an energy field, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's energy field is completely different.
Right.
And later on we'll go over how to measure the energy field of different people. So the last thing is people experience different parallel realities using their sacred geometric mandala.
Mm.
Okay, so let's again take a look at this picture. And in this picture, what you have is you have a central Buddha, which is representative of the universal one mind. And then you have different dimensions. You have physical lower dimensions, you have higher dimensions in the clouds, etc. And they all have different master teachers in those
Mm-hmm.
dimensions. And they also have students and practitioners that are following their instruction, learning for them as well. But once you reach a higher energy level, you will have these two halos. one around the head and one around the body. And some people actually can see people's aura fields, and it is interesting. Like, I went to the grocery store and some lady ran out from the back and said, "I saw you from the front." You know, "I saw your rainbow." I was like, I just want to get my groceries. But no, it is definitely true. So look at this, study this. You're going to see a common theme, and they all have the same thing. So let's go to the next one. And then again, Shane, if you or anybody else in the chat has questions about the images or anything else like that, I'll be happy to answer them as we go along as well.
Okay, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. So you guys chime in with caps or at Unbiased on the Fence, and I'll see your question.
So the next one, sacred geometry in Earth's grids. So this beautiful Earth right there, and she has all her grids. And if you look at this, remember that picture of the dome architecture that Buckminster Fuller created?
Mm-hmm.
The same thing.
Yeah, I can see it. Similarities, for sure.
Yeah, you see the grid, the light grid. You see the intersection points. And if you actually put the geometric patterns in there, you'll see Metatron's cube as well. So basically, Earth has a consciousness as well. So she is also a living being. And we know she's a living being because of the Schumann resonance. It is our scientific way to measure her raising her energy level into the fifth dimension. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And Earth is also made up of sacred geometry. And she is completing her mandala to move into a parallel reality towards the fifth dimension. So she's moving along with the whole universe, which is ascending. So she's being pulled along too.
Mm-hmm.
And she can't drag her leg much longer. So the universe is ascending, all the other planets, everything within the spectrum is ascending, and so is Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so at whatever level you're at right now, whatever level you are at, you're going to be pulled along by the storm. You're going to be pulled along. So things will get much, much more polarizing to test your true resonance.
Mm-hmm.
And people will show you who they are when they're tested. So this is perfect timing with the COVID right now, because
that's what I was thinking. That sounds like what we're in right now. Yeah.
Like if you didn't think a lot of the political and economic and social upheavals in the last couple of years wasn't polarizing enough, Earth, like, just being part of this experience and then agreeing to be part of this experience for whatever reason, for your own personal growth, I mean, that's going to kick it up a lot. It's going to turn up the dial.
Yep.
So much. And I've seen that too. I've seen people who have been, love and light and farting rainbows and confetti comes out of their mouth all over the place, and as soon as COVID came around, it's out the window and it's Armageddon.
I've heard about it. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what happened to consciousness? What happened to consciousness? What happened to manifesting your own reality and taking, your own reins on your life? So
right.
You just play your game, do your thing. You'll get there. So anyways, things are really going to amp up, and they're going to amp up more. And as you go along, imagine it like this. Imagine like if you were ever in a storm, okay, like a really bad thunderstorm or a hurricane or a tornado. Some people in the Midwest have gone through tornadoes, okay? Everybody's going to respond differently to that experience as they're getting pulled along, okay? You're going to have some people who are just going to get an easy time, just like, ooh, I'm just gonna go for it, ooh, yay, and you're gonna have some people who's gonna be cussing all the way. You're gonna have other people flying through trying to hit everybody along, so everybody has a different experience with the storm that's pulling them through. But they'll get to the other side, and again, as you're going through difficult terrain, try your best not to do something that you're going to regret 6 months later. So because Earth is going to kick it up quite a bit, and this is a series of things that's going to continue to raise your resonance, continue to usher you into a newer way of living with her.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get to a point where you experience a galactic Earth, you're going to have to really, really come to terms with stereotypes, prejudices, hangups, etc. Because if like somebody who is not of your human species walks right by you, okay, it's really going to challenge
Oh yeah.
your humanity. Okay, don't first don't so, or like if things change and your 3D world has completely changed and you have to learn new skills, it's going to really challenge your ability to adapt and live in the higher energy. So we are all learning this together, and everybody's going to go through it differently. So just be aware of that as spaceship Earth continues to rise with the universe. So and it's she's lighting up, so I'll explain the scientific behind that as well.
Right.
So in completing the light grid through connecting vortex points around the world signifies the completion of Metatron's cube for planet Earth. So some people will make it, others won't. No judgment. It's just how energy organizes. So remember, there are parallel versions of most people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and remember that you're experiencing something because it was meant for you to experience in your soul growth, in your life experience for some reason. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not a matter of judgment. If you go into a physics class and you study physics, or you study science at all in chemistry class, you'll learn that things condense, matter matches up to other matter, light attracts other light, etc., etc. So it's the same exact thing. It's just simple physics and just how energy organizes. So
Mm-hmm.
higher frequency goes with higher frequency, lower frequency can't stand you and they move on. So it's just different experiences, and that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually everybody will make it. So and then people who radiate at 5D unity consciousness will have an easier time living in spaceship Earth. All others will struggle hard to keep up with the new higher level curriculum. So just take the example of we're all going through the storm of COVID right now, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take long to go to Facebook and kind of see where people are in their
Yeah.
psyche. So the people who it's getting too hot in the kitchen for them, they're going to move on.
But
So they're
I
gonna.
love the fact that you called it curriculum, because it's, when you look at this like a classroom, or, that we're all here to learn something. And it's like a university where we all have our different classes and our own journeys and gifts and things like that. You can really see how we're all here to learn something. Nobody's
Mm,
better than anybody. If we graduate out of one section of the university of life and move on to something else, and somebody comes later on, it doesn't make us any better, because we're all here doing our own thing.
yeah, we're all infinite. You're all
Right.
infinite. There's really no end. It's just the end of one experience started another experience, and you're going to experience. I mean, everybody experiences, the wave differently.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to experience it more cohesion, then there are ways to do that. If you want to experience it with more difficulty, because that's just kind of how you like to ride the wave, then you're going to get that.
Right.
So um, so Earth is also lighting up, and the thing that's interesting. We'll go on to how she lights up her light grid.
Mm.
Sacred space and ley lines.
Yeah.
Sacred space and ley lines. So the interest, everybody is very familiar with Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Um, Stonehenge there's been so much scientific evidence around Stonehenge having a very, very high energy field around it. Okay. And the thing that's interesting about Stonehenge, it kind of really brings a lot of scientific information to sacred space and ley lines, is that Sir Alfred Watkins in England discovered ley lines in 1921 through dowsing rods and mapping out the magnetic lines on the Earth. And so he found that sacred megalithic monuments often resided along these energy grid paths on the Earth. and that the access points along the sacred pathways often had large abundance of energy like a vortex. Okay, so in his research, and you could do this with dowsing rods, like actually um, a lot of the power companies, when they try to find new places to set up, they take out a dowsing rod and they walk around trying to find where the water is. And that's how these energy companies find where they want to set up their plants. They use dowsing rods. They locate where is the highest energy in the land. So so what that means is, if you look, I'm going to go back to the other slide at sacred geometry and Earth's grid. All these points are high energy markers. Okay, so all the high energy markers, the intersection points, is where these little vortexes or high energy grids are. And oftentimes what they found, and what Sir Watkins found, is megalithic architecture is there, ancient temples, churches, pyramids. Lots of pyramids are on these grids, and
Even
oftentimes
Easter Island, that
Easter
island out in the middle of
Island.
nowhere. Yeah.
Yep, all over the world.
Yeah.
Bermuda Triangle, all of these weird Earth events that happen around electricity often are in these vortexes. And what they also found, Sir Alfred Watkins also found, is um, he found that cities that are highly populated also gravitate and build on top of these high energy points. So, and
Like
people are
Washington D.C. is
like Washington,
yeah.
D.C. Yeah.
Yeah.
So people are attracted to the city they're attracted to for whatever reason, not knowing. But like many of these big cities have high energy points on the Earth's grid. And so if you want to help the Earth's grid light up even more, you create all these architecture to kind of help amplify the points. So that's why pyramids typically are in all these grid points. Stonehenge and other megalithic structures like Stonehenge are in these grid points. So they're just lighting up and working on the natural energy of Earth's axis points. So there are all these vortexes all over the world that are connecting the other vortexes and activating the light grids of Earth. And they've already found this in science. Like if you know, the universe is quite smart. It's not an accident that they're equal proportion to one another all over the Earth. These axis points on these ley lines.
Yeah, and they all line up and stuff. It's like, wow, it's amazing. On a global scale, you can see how they all line up across the same
So
lines.
remember that picture, that first picture of Buckminster Fuller's dome?
Right.
Imagine that's the Earth, and that's all the ley lines and the axis points. They all start creating a flower of life.
Right. Now, I don't want to get ahead of on your slide, but are you going to get into how we're sort of like that on the planet, creating the grid?
Okay. I'm built up.
Okay.
So anyways, and then of course in forests and in nature, there are vortexes that can also be seen, and you can see natural shapes and bends in the forest and the land that kind of naturally build circles, and those are natural vortexes as well that they have in the forest. And oftentimes if you go there, you'll see some kind of stone arrangement in that area as well. So
in Sedona, have you been to Sedona?
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen the trees that sort of twist and grow up in the vortex areas, and the tree twists because of it. You can see the wood spiraling around. So yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, I love Sedona. I cannot ever take a picture of Sedona without some random like rainbow color shape or my pictures or whatever.
Right. Yeah,
you can't take a normal picture in Sedona.
Yeah, that's a high energy place for sure, right there.
Yeah, the whole place.
Yeah.
Definitely on the grid. So if you want to have some fun with vortexes and energies and grid points, go to where there are ley lines. Just go to a monolith or a pyramid, or some kind of sacred space. You'll have some fun pictures.
Even Mount Shasta, that's out towards you. I guess that's like one of those. That's the mountain that's on one of the energy places too, right?
You mean which mountain?
Mount Shasta. Is that in color?
Mount Shasta, yeah. Mount Shasta. Mount Rainier too.
Oh yeah, that's even closer to you, isn't it?
Yeah, Mount Rainier. Yeah. So again, human consciousness connects higher frequency of Earth ascension into 5D. So we all can connect to these energies as well through living a higher vibration and through meditation. Okay, so I'm a Seattle girl, so I got to give some props to my city. So anyways, um, this is the Seattle Leyline project. The Leyline map is a geo group project, and they actually the gentleman on the top right is Chuck Petty's, and he studied under Buckminster Fuller. So of course I had to ask him all these questions when I went to visit his Earth Sanctuary, and he was part of the Geo Group project. And what they did was they mapped out the access points and ley line points in and around Seattle. And then what they did was put monolithic structures and art like what you see here all over Seattle.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I actually work in a building really close to the Seahawks Stadium. There's a huge one that's like a floor and a half tall, and then there's Tesla sculptures at like a floor and a half tall. Uh, there's there's a point to it, and the point is that they they like the power plants when they did dowsing rods to find the leyland areas and high magnetic points around Seattle did that as well. And that's how they found this is where we're going to put Seattle City Light. This is where we're going to put the power plant because it magnifies the energy. So they spend less money in creating the energy because they're working off of the energy of the earth.
Yeah.
So, so really, really smart thing. And you could do this in your city. And if everybody in every city planner, does a little bit of this in their sculpture, in their art, in their city planning, you pretty much can create all these cities that are high frequency and working off the natural ley lines of the earth, and helping the light grid
Yeah.
move up. And also at the same time, because you do that, you help bring up the energy of the area and it attracts higher frequency individuals. So
Oh.
yeah, so you could do this in Oklahoma, you can do this in Kentucky, you can do this in New York, you can do this all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's really not that hard to do. So take a dowsing rod, go do some exercise, find the points, stick a megalithic structure on it, move on to the next one. Really not that hard. So but there's the sites there, and what he did after his city planning days, Chuck Petty's, he was one of the he again in this project set it up with his group in Seattle and then connected Portland to San Francisco. So the whole West Coast has a unique frequency, which can be duplicated all over the world using ley lines and the Earth's axis.
Very
So the
good.
whole West Coast has its own signature and frequency. And again, other places in the world does this as well. A lot of the ancient pyramid sites have huge energy that people can go and see and learn about as well. So anyways, there's Chuck and I, and on the bottom right is me. This is a 72-acre sanctuary in Whidbey Island, Washington, which is not far from where I live, maybe about a 15-minute ferry ride. And of course, there's my husband, the best cracker in the barrel. But anyways, we always have a good walk there. So it's a very good park to just kind of go into, and again, you can create that and duplicate that anywhere in the world. So Vesica Pisces, this is going to start looking very familiar because we're going to break down sacred geometry. We're going to break down the flower of life, and then we're going to put the parts back together, and
Yeah. Okay.
you're going to see how it all comes back together and everybody's talking about the same thing, and it goes back to more than 13,000 years ago. This information goes back to Lemuria
Awesome.
and possibly Atlantis. So Vesica Pisces, as you see on the left there, you see the Christ at the Cluny Museum. It's the National Museum of the Middle Ages in Europe. As you see there, you see Jesus, and you see kind of like the Jesus fish is what he's known for there.
Yeah.
But that Jesus fish is a Vesica Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And on the top right there, you see this is a real picture from Hubble. Okay, the NASA's Space Telescope, and it is the MYCN 18 hourglass nebula around a dying star. And so when a star dies, the way a star dies is it collides with another spiral galaxy, and two spiral galaxies colliding make a Vesica Pisces. And in the very center looks like an eye.
It does look like an eye. As a matter of fact, that's exactly how my logo is. I've got the Jesus fish at the top with the eye in it like that. From the two, they call that almond shape the mandorla for almond, but it's the two parts of the circle that, the
Yep.
Vesica Pisces.
It happens in nature. You do it over and over again. It happens in nature. There's always an eye in the middle of Vesica Pisces, because the eye is when you take two intersections, the
Mm-hmm.
Vesica Pisces in the middle, it is the portal to a
Right.
new experience.
Right.
Okay.
Which is why we see Jesus
So,
and Mary in the mandorla so much in the artwork, right? They are the
because
doorway or the portal.
yep,
Right.
because
Right.
you have remember the mandala where everybody who is of higher frequency has two halos, one around the head, one around the body.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus has one around him, and then when he intersects with Mary, it's basically two circles intersecting like a Vesica Pisces, and the
Right.
new experience
Right.
is maybe new people.
Right.
so so anyways, as you see on the bottom right, there is new people being created through the Vesica Pisces.
Awesome.
So again, some notations about the Vesica Pisces is the Vesica Pisces is an eclipse intersection of two intersecting circles.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they're portals to new experiences. In Buddhism, it is believed that portals into a new reality are created within a person's consciousness through inner work. So you create a Vesica Pisces through your consciousness that propel you to different realities. And again, to do that is through changing your perspective and working on your inner work. So there's no right or wrong way to travel and explore different realities. It's just based on where do you want to go next. So and again, a nice notation is that Professor Charles R. Henry at the Department of Sculpture at Virginia Commonwealth University wrote this in his article, Sacred Geometry, Linking the Human Form to Great Pyramids. And in his life of work, he studied the Great Pyramids of Egypt and the mathematics, and found that they have the same proportion as the human body in terms of sacred geometry. So he found that even the pyramids are designed much like sacred geometry as people are. And so what Charles Henry discovered is that when you take two bubbles and you merge them together in a photograph, and you repeat that pattern over and over and over again digitally, you'll discover that the intersecting spheres over each other form a human being, and it starts to form like a face and a body and so forth. So he did that with in his research, he did that with just digital, just taking two circles and just kind of compounding it over and over and over again, like the flower of life.
Mm-hmm.
And as it did that, a face started to form in his digital drawing, a body started to form. This
Wow.
is all digital. So it's the same thing as you see in the picture of the bottom right here. This is actual human cells.
Right.
And if you look inside each one of those bubbles there, you may see one circle, you may see two in a bubble, you
Right.
may see three. The one that's highlighted in the middle, you see four.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it starts looking like the scene of life. Okay,
Yeah.
but as you make more and more, the ones behind there have even more than four, and so they start colliding and making these Vesica Pisces. And as they collide more and more, they form a human being, and that's how you make a baby, people.
And that's about as deep as we're going to go with that, right? I'm just teasing. I do have a question from Creative Goddess. She says, "What is the benefit to going to one of these parks with the ley lines? Do we feel a surge of energy from going there? I definitely go to places like that for meditation. I feel like it amplifies it. What do you say, Vaughn?"
Oh, when I was visiting Sedona, I really felt I felt more clarity and I felt much better. Now, I don't really feel bad in the first place, but
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like a zing of energy. I had much more energy. So a lot of people say that when they go to these grid points, they do feel better. They feel more healing, and their meditation becomes more lucid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
and
and
that's
I know Sedona for me, it was like I could feel the energy there, but it was almost like you had to put your attention on it to see just how much stronger and different the energy feels. And once
right.
you like got into a meditative state and you could feel you were in a different place, you can actually feel the energy. But you have
Mm.
to put your attention on it. It's like you can totally miss it. So I could totally see a 3D person going there and be like, "What are you talking about? The energy?" You know, it's sort of you have to tune into it.
You got to tune
You
up. You
know,
got to raise your vibration,
right?
and it is scientific because they've already proven in science that these access points are Earth's natural vortexes, natural
Mm-hmm.
energy points. But a lot of the ancient churches are built on top of other churches that are built on these grid points.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So there's no coincidence. They did that on purpose because that
Mm-hmm.
is where the energy was.
Yeah, and a lot of these
So,
structures will actually have the domed roofs too, because that's supposed to
mm,
funnel the energy, or a pyramidal shape or whatever to funnel those
yeah.
energies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they put a lot of money and investment into trying to come up with sacred geometry architecture to
Mm-hmm.
further amplify the energy that exists in that point on
Right.
the ley line. So, all very scientific stuff. That they were not stupid when they spent all this time and energy creating all these cathedrals everywhere and these pyramids and megaliths.
Right.
So, what you see here on the screen, the flower of life. So everybody's familiar with the flower of life.
Mm-hmm.
On the top left, there is the basic flower of life. Again, it's all those vesica Pisces that continue to form over and over and over each other. And as you can remember, Buckminster Fuller's dome architecture
Mm-hmm.
is the flower of life in 3D in the actual architecture. But what you will see if you look to the right is the egg of life. And if you remember the image in the previous slide of human cells replicating to build a
Yeah.
human out of multiple vesica Pisces that turn into a flower of life, that's the egg of life. So remember that I was saying those little bubbles inside of a human cell,
Mm-hmm.
they just start coming close to each other like the fruit of life on the
Mm-hmm.
bottom there. They start coming together. Then they run out of space and they start colliding like the egg of life.
Yeah.
Then they run out of space and because they keep multiplying and then they start turning into the flower of life. And
Mm-hmm.
as you see there, Metatron's cube is encoded in the flower of life. So this is a basic 3D portrayal. Like if you're looking at all the vesica Pisces that are duplicating and you just look at it from the top view, it's
Right.
going to look like the flower of life.
Right.
What I'm going to show you is actually a 3D structure. But on the right there, you see the Kabbalistic tree of life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the Kabbalah's sacred form, sacred holy form that falls into the flower of life. Okay. So
Okay.
you're going to start seeing that a lot of religious sacred geometry symbols are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So some things to notate about this as you guys all study this to see the similarity. And as you see this, you're going to start, really understanding it because it's going to like, oh, it falls into one, it falls into another. Okay, I get it. So there is a sophisticated math formula that is encoded within a three-dimensional structure of sacred geometry, which consists of 64 points. Okay? 64
Okay.
points. In the flower of life, if you count all of those intersection points of Vesica Pisces, there's 64 points. Okay, just remember the number 64 because it's going to come up again in
Okay.
other spiritual symbols around the world. So the flower of life symbol is seen in the artwork on the Assyrian temple in Abydos, Egypt, in King Harold's palace in the 1st century, in the Flower of Life energy ball that two lions who often adorn the gates out of the Forbidden City in Beijing. They are often lions that are holding the Flower of Life in Asia and China, and in the Hampi Indian temple, and of course the Library of Celsius in Turkey. So the Flower of Life has been around many ancient civilizations across the world. In again, Leonardo da Vinci, the Freemason, drew the Flower of Life in his drawings as well. So, and I will show you that in the next slide. But one thing to notate as well about this image, if you start studying this image, you're going to start seeing the scientifics behind it. So, quantum physicist Nassim Haramein discovered that the intersection points in the Flower of Life pattern has 64 Vesica Pisces points, like I told you here, which is the same exact intersecting points as the Hindu Sri Yantra symbol, which is awakened consciousness has the potential to activate a wormhole vortex within their body. So the physicist has discovered that unlimited energy is created by people when they are awakened, when they radiate a high energy, and they create kind of a vortex vacuum inside their body, and that's how they move from one parallel reality to another, according to Buddhists. Because Buddhists have believed for over almost 2,600 years that you activating your mandala allows you to travel parallel realities. And the challenge, again, is to be a co-creator or a conscious creator. So there's no wrong way to travel realities. Some people just like a more smooth experience. So, and then again, vortex mathematics formulates that shapes such as the flower of life, seed of life, tree of life, the golden spiral, the golden ratio, tetrahedron, hexahedron, octahedron, and the dodecahedron fit within the fifth element, which is Archangel Metatron's icosahedron cube. So that's why many people refer to Metatron's cube as 5D, because it takes 5 platonic solids to fit in and make one dome. That's why it's 5D. Okay,
I
so that's what
got
they
you.
mean by that. So let's go to the next one. So the flower of life changes DNA. So we're gonna be like, how does the flower of life change my DNA? Because I want to be healthier, look better, etc.
Right.
So in Buddhism, um, the language and the words that people choose to say to themselves has an energy signature, and that energy is a feedback loop that calibrates your personal health. So therefore, reassuring yourself that you are loved and that you're lovable, it does generate a healthy body. Okay. um, so Metatron's icosahedron cube, it shows up in language through the study of phonetic languages such as Celtic runes. You can look at Celtic runes and you can actually take the shape of different runes and actually find it in the flower life pattern. And when somebody studies Celtic runes, and they take a closer look at the flower of life symbol, they can easily see those different patterns. And then the other thing I remember, I told you guys, remember the number 64. There is 64 codons in DNA, which are the same 64 Vesica Pisces intersecting nodes in the Sri Lanka and in the flower of the life. So the words that somebody says and hears sends a frequency that changes your DNA. So you probably already know this, but it's always good to kind of remember that if you talk shit to yourself every day and you
Mm,
talk like that to people that you love every single day, you are hurting them and you're making them sicker and you're making yourself sicker. So instead of, like if I always say, if people put blades in the words that they choose to say, they wouldn't say so many mean things to themselves or to
ah,
other people, because they can physically see the knives cutting into people,
right.
knocking them down. And the studies have shown that the language that you choose to use changes your DNA.
Yeah.
So if you're sick or you're recovering from an illness, um, you want to surround yourself around positivity, be positive on yourself. That's why, like, if you have cancer, you have to cut off all the negativity in your life, negative people, etc., because it doesn't help you in your recovery. It's the same exact thing. So they found this in science. Dr. Russian doctors Peter Gar Jahev and Vladimir Poponin said that positive words and affirmations to light rays, and then they took those positive affirmations and they shined that light ray with program affirmations and chants to the test subjects, to different clients, and the result was that the client suffered from an illness, they healed faster from the symptoms. What they also did in their study is they intercepted the light language through ultraviolet light between two frog embryos in the lab. So they just, they were watching two frog embryos and they just took snapshots of the light in their lab, and they had the concept that there must be language between these embryos through light because they obviously can't talk, and they took those flashes of light that they picked up between these embryos and they shined it on a salamander embryo. And what resulted was a salamander egg develop into a frog. Okay. So they've already shown that um, light has language. So those solar flares have language, they have DNA codes.
So we really do get these downloads like people talk about in a very scientific way. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. But wear your sunscreen, don't get burned. Um, remember, you still have bodies. So, but those, yeah, those, all that light that's coming from the sun, that's coming from the earth, all that light, it does have language, and it does send a frequency. That those frequencies what changes your DNA. So they've shown this in science. Okay, so Metatron's cube. So according to Wikipedia, you know, they refer to sacred geometry commonly as Metatron's cube because it's been around for a long time, but Metatron really kind of brought it to the forefront in the Bible, and so it's just kind of been revered as Metatron's cube. But you'll see that it's sacred geometry has been around all over the world for a very very long time prior to the modern religions. But basically, according to Wikipedia, Metatron is an archangel in Judeo-Islamic mythology, and he's mentioned in a free brief passages of the Agada and in the mystical Kabbalistic texts within the rabbinic literature. So the name Metatron is not mentioned in the Torah, and how the name is originated is a matter of debate. But in Islamic tradition, he is known as Mitatresh, I think it is, and the angel of the veil. So that he's the angel of the veil. So he's gonna show you what's behind the secret curtain of this hologram. So that's what he was known for in Islam tradition. In Jewish apocrypha and in the early Kabbalah text, Metatron is the name that Enoch received after his transformation into an angel. So, furthermore, the Macabre text I'm going to botch this, Gota Yehi Zil identifies the ancient of days from the book of Daniel as Metatron. So there's all these different Abrahamic religions that have reference to Metatron as a person. And so, regardless of the debates in religious canon amongst the various sources of Metatron's life, sacred geometry is what is associated with Metatron. And Metatron's cube is due to the depictions of his accounts and his accounts of being communicated to with heaven through sacred geometry symbols. So let me explain that a little bit more. And I know there's people who know the Bible up and down. I'm not professing to go that far, but this is basically how sacred geometry typically gets associated with Metatron's cube. So we refer to it as Metatron's cube, just to be simplified. But if you see it on the top left, and I hope everybody's studying these images as we go along, because it's still going to start really making clear. But if you see at the top left, you see Metatron there, and he's praying to and having communication with this higher being that's traveling in a circle bubble. Okay, you see that? Memorize that, because you're going to see that come up later on in Buddhist Mandalas. A teacher in a huge circle. And then, of course, you have the lions there, the flying lions, the lions at the gates. They're usually holding the flower of life. And then you have a wheel within wheels on the left there. And this is their version of wheel within wheels. But if you look at the flower of life, and you have Vesica Pisces that are circles of wheels going within wheels, you start getting wheels within wheels inside a bubble. Okay, but that's the depiction of Matthias Marian's engraving of Ezekiel's vision from 1670. And then on the right of that picture, Ezekiel's wheel in St. John the Baptist Church in North Macedonia, and this is from the 19th century. This is their version of what he was talking about. You see the Vesica Pisces moving around in a spiral pattern, kind of like a vortex, and they're interlooping each other. So again, you're seeing the Vesica Pisces over and over again. And the more Vesica Pisces that happen, they become the flower of life that fall within a wheel. So you guys are starting to see how they tried to understand sacred geometry way back then, and this is kind of how they were able to decipher what they were talking about. But this is hard stuff for even people like today to get.
Oh
So
yeah,
let
but I mean, a
alone
lot of the people in the community that realized the Mandela effect was happening realized the Vesica Pisces is a really good symbol to show two realities sort of overlapping, and we'll have dual memories, and it's like you're in that center point of the overlapping, the eyeball shape, the Jesus fish, and you're seeing a little piece of two different realities. So yeah,
right.
it comes up all the time. It's
That's
amazing.
all the time. So this is really good kind of like symbolism,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's really hard to explain it nowadays. And again, I spent 20 years studying this stuff to try to find scientific evidence
Right.
on the understanding that I already knew growing up
Hmm.
from mysticism in studying Buddhism in my childhood. But the information didn't become available until the span of the last 20 years.
Right.
So we're really lucky to have all these people add the little piece of the puzzle, and then me being a book nerd took it all and put it together. So anyways, on the bottom right there, you have the Islamic portrayal of Metatron from the 14th century. So this is what he supposedly looked like. And all he ever talks about is him. They have him as an archangel in that picture. Is sacred geometry and moving parallel realities. So on the right here, what you'll see is on the left is the traditional 2D symbol of Metatron's cube. But these, like the tetrahedron, the hexadron, the octahedron, the dodecahedron, and the last one, the icosahedron, those are the 5 platonic solids in math. Okay, these are real platonic solids. And if you take them all and you put them into the icosahedron, they all fit. Okay. For those math geeks out there who's like, well, the dodecahedron kind of looks like the icosahedron. The dodecahedron fits within the icosahedron, but you can't fit an icosahedron into the dodecahedron. And that's
Right.
just for those like platonic solid nerds.
Okay.
So, because that's always some debate. You're like, I know more. But anyways, if you put all those together, all those platonic solids together, they make Metatron's cube. Okay, so that explains that symbolism. It's the same stuff. And then another interesting notation in my book is like in 1960, Kenneth Snelson, while trying to extend planar structure, he discovered a tension and a compression form to woven fabric, and it is composed of struts and followed by a zigzag course, and the rigid parts that held firmly in the tension wires. And so he actually published this in an article called Tensegrity and Weaving and the Binary World. And basically, in short, what Kenneth Snelden did is, he works with fabrics and metals. And what he did was weave fabric based on the form of sacred geometry. And when he weaved fabrics based on the form of sacred geometry, once he tightened it up, the fabric changed to steel.
What?
Like the fabric
Wow.
pattern of thread, once he completed this flower of life pattern correctly, it changed to steel and then it turned back.
It's crazy.
That's how strong Metatron's cube is. Okay, so for you people who like to do that, go have fun. Okay, so in the previous slide earlier, I was talking about the ancient structures that had the flower of life symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So on the right here, you have from 4,000 to 3,600 years ago in the Middle Kingdom, you have the Temple of Osiris, and you have actually physicist Nassim Haramein actually went and saw this himself, but it's a very interesting. It's a close-up picture of a very interesting megalithic site in Egypt, and nobody really knows what it was used for or how it was created. A lot of the stone was very advanced stonery, and as you go into deeper, like older and older structures, it becomes more of a mystery of how they create it, because it's so precise and so clean that even the modern tools that we have today can't even duplicate it. And so the interesting thing about the Temple of Osiris is that the flower of life pattern is not etched, it was burned into that, almost like an afterthought, like we're going to forget about this sacred site, but let's just burn this pattern in and then run away. So
Right.
people speculate, but it was burned into that. And that's what Nassim found. And he's actually doing a lot of archaeology to uncover the flower of life all over ancient structures all over the world. At the Iraq Palace, at 645 BC, a lot of Islamic architecture also has the flower of life pattern all over. It's a very common pattern. Again, here's a picture of the Codex Atlanticus from 1478 to 1519 BCE from the famous Leonardo da Vinci. And he has a whole plate of flower of life balls. So, he was already keying in on the secret too. And then in the middle, you have from the 1st century, a bathhouse image. And these are all copyright-free images. There's better images out there on the internet, but these are copyright-free images from Wikipedia. So, but you have the imperial garden lion at the gates of the Forbidden City in Beijing, and that's from 1406. And what you'll see in a lot of ancient temples, and you'll see in a lot of Greek ancient temples and other Middle Eastern ancient temples, is you're often going to see the lion at the gates. And the lions often hold a ball. And many of the balls, the pattern has kind of weathered out, but at the Forbidden City, it hasn't weathered out. And if you look closely, that's the flower of life pattern. It looks like that first slide of Bucky Fuller's dome
Yeah,
structure.
that's what I
Okay.
was thinking.
Yep. So, and it's interesting as they look into archaeology, and they look into archaeology in ancient times that they don't really have any history for or account for, and they come across even some underwater archaeology. They come across the lion structure. It's always holding a ball in his paw. So this has been around longer than we know.
Just right in plain sight, and we're like,
In
oh,
plain sight, but we have no clue what it means.
yeah, nice design. I think I've
This is
seen
a
it
nice
somewhere
design.
before.
I mean, yeah. And remember, most of the structures, the ancient structures that archaeologists are finding underwater, were before the ice age melt. like over 10 to 13 or so thousand years ago,
Right.
according to geologists. And so some of them have this lion with holding this ball in their ancient temples underwater. So
Right.
that tells you how old this symbol has been around. And then, of course, in the left, you have diseases. So if you look at diseases and you actually look at them for the structure, and what scientists and researchers have found is that diseases actually fall into sacred geometry patterns.
Mm.
Sacred geometry patterns. And then if you look inside the diseases, they have all these, like, hexameres and other protein compounds and so forth. And they kind of kind of like the Borg.
Right. Right.
They kind of organize very nicely.
Yeah.
And a lot of diseases kind of proliferate like the Mandelbrot set. They just form and
Right.
then they become their own thing. So the one that we're working with right now, COVID 2019, that this disease, if you look at it, it's very geometric.
Yeah.
I mean, even the little antennas are perfect triangles.
Yeah.
Very, very, and if you're familiar with if you're familiar with the Monobrot set, if they did when they do the Monobrot set with like cannabis, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
with cannabis or any other kind of flowers, and they do it over and over and over and over and over again, it looks like, if you look at the gray area of the coronavirus disease 2019,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like that.
Ah, the
So
inner part of it then.
the inner part of it. So
Wow.
it's just amplification of Mandelbrot sets. So even diseases follow sacred geometry patterns. So
Well, that
everything.
explains why some of the sound healing stuff you hear about that. I got to be careful about what I say, but you hear about sound therapies that can affect things, and with cymatics, you can see why now. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna get to cymatics. So
Okay.
a couple things about these images that I want to kind of read out. So this design of viral icosahedron is discussed further in the research at the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry and Physics and Astronomy at the University of California in LA. So their research publication um, at the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States, what they said was, with very few exceptions, the shells or capsids of sphere-like viruses have the symmetry of an icosahedron and are composed of coat proteins. So although the synthesis of artificial protein cages is a rapidly developing area of science, the design criteria for self-assembled shells that can reproduce the remarkable properties of viral capsids are only beginning to be understood. So they're just beginning to understand viruses and how they organize. So they're learning that even viruses adhere to sacred geometry. So, and then the
Very
other
good.
thing, yeah, the other thing is, in ancient archaeology, many researchers, again, like I said, are finding the lion of the gates with the flower of life. And also in many ancient um, underwater and lost civilizations that they have no placement in history for,
Mm-hmm.
they're finding sacred geometry as decorations
Mm.
as well. So some sites are 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 years ago. They're sacred geometry decorating the sites.
Wow.
So
And we've heard there's like 300 underwater cities just in the Mediterranean alone. I think they say so. A
yeah,
lot is underwater, and there's a lot to be explored.
yeah, and it's underwater because of the ice age, because of the water rising over the time.
Yeah.
So the ice age melts. So there's a lot of really good work that the children of today and the near future can get into if they like scuba diving and all that kind of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, next slide. The Sri Yantra. Okay, so we finally get to the Sri Yantra, which is the Hindu symbol from the very old. They say it's 7,000 to 13,000 years old. The Vedas, of India, of
Mm-hmm.
Hinduism, that text. And the symbol, the sacred symbol, is the Sri Yantra. And so, um, some things to notate before I get into these pictures. So go ahead and study these pictures. I'm gonna tell you some things to keep in mind about the Sri Yantra. So in Kabbalah, that tradition calls the aura field your Merkaba. Okay, your aura
Mm-hmm.
field, your
Yeah.
sacred geometry aura field, they call it your Merkaba. In Hindu, your Merkaba is called your Sri Yantra, which is the energetic vessel that an awakened person travels through different parallel realities in. So they say this Sri Yantra symbol is your Merkaba that you travel through. And in Buddhism, they call this your mandala. Different terms for the same thing. So this flow of energy that is depicted through the 64 intersecting points of the Sri Yantra is also represented in the 64 amino acids in DNA.
Wow.
Also, the I Ching, Chinese Book of Changes, also is made up of, what's the number?
64.
64! 64 hexagrams and functions, and it functions much like DNA in the Sri Yantra. The other thing also is the second command representing the 64 intersecting points in the Sri Yantra is seen in the three-dimensional pyramid structure represented in the sacred mountain, Mount Muru. So Mount Muru is believed to be a 5-peak mountain in the Himalayas that is believed by many Buddhists, Jainists, and Hindus to be the spiritual center of the universe on Earth. So that's the picture on the right. And the thing, before I forget about that, is you'll see a lot of pyramid structures in Buddhist arts and mandalas, because like the scientist in the earlier slide has found in his research, mathematically, the pyramid structure mathematically is sacred geometry. It falls in line with the sacred geometry of the human body as well. So all sacred geometry in all forms that it comes into is the same math and proportions. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
all has 64 intersecting points because they all, each one of it has a consciousness and creates a mandala. So the mathematician and engineer Vladimir Sagmeister studied the mathematical portions of the different intersecting points in the Sri Yantra, and he compared the exact points and mathematical distance between the intersecting points in the Sri Yantra to our solar system. And what he found that he published in his findings, addition to Sri Yantra and its mathematical properties, is what he found in studying the math of our solar system between planets and the sun and all that, is it's the same exact vortex math as sacred geometry. So in the universe is
Mm-hmm.
organized based off sacred geometry. So everything is sacred geometry. So a couple things, now that you guys have got familiar with the image here of the Sri Yantra, is the first thing on the right, like I said, is this is a Buddhist mandala. And I hope by now you're starting to recognize the two halos in all of the Buddhas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So and the Buddhas are at different levels because they're experiencing different parallel realities,
Mm-hmm.
higher, lower, side, left to right, whatever. They're experiencing different parallel realities. And the more they raise the consciousness, the bigger they are. And the other thing is, again, just having a splendid time in whatever reality that they're in. But what you see on the left is what I hope you've been studying. So the Sri Yantra is a symbol, a 2D symbol, just like the flower of life. But what they have done in a structure art is they've taken the Sri Yantra and they turn it into a 3D structure based on its intersecting points, its pyramids or its triangles. Okay, and where all those intersecting points in the flower of life, they created a triangle, and they built it out. And when they built out the 2D Hindu Sri Yantra symbol, which is their sacred geometry symbol, it looks like this. Okay, so this is kind of the Merkaba that, according to Buddhists and Hindus, everyone is. Now, the interesting thing is, in this display, they shown light on this 3D structure, and at any point where the light shines through the 3D structure, it always creates that pattern on the ground.
Flower of life.
The flower of life. So a 3D pattern where you shine light through the intersecting points of a 3D Sri Yantra creates a 2D flower of life pattern shadow. It's the same thing.
Yeah. I definitely see the Merkaba with extra shapes on top of it. So it's the Merkaba with more added to it, more detail, I guess.
Yeah, but it's the same exact points. There's only 64 points in this 3D Sri Yantra.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the next image. So here's a Sri Yantra's 2D symbol. Okay, this is the typical 2D symbol that people recognize as the Hindu Sri Yantra. Okay, you see the one in the middle inside of the lotus flower.
Yeah.
Okay, that symbol that you see here,
yeah,
is the 2D version of this symbol that you see here. It's the same symbol.
Okay.
Okay, it's just built out. They just built it out. And so what was interesting is that in sound research, scientists found that playing the sound in a tonoscope or a sand plate, it formed the perfect Sri Yantra symbol.
Wow.
The sound of it creates the Sri Yantra symbol in science. Okay, so it signifies that the Sri Yantra, which is an ancient symbol linked to the Hindu Vedas, which could be as old as 13,000. I've heard almost 26,000 because of the cycles of how they measure astronomy in the Vedas. So we don't really know quite how old, but it's very old. But it shows that the Sri Yantra symbol is not a man-made design, but it's natural in nature. This is a natural formation in nature. And it shows the evidence that there is a divine universal consciousness in all beings, and physicality is designed based off sacred geometry.
Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, you can, if you wanted to, go ahead and find a tonoscope, play have fun. You're gonna get this very intricate 64-point 2D version of the flower of life.
Very cool.
In your science experiment. So the other thing that was very interesting about this research is that 432 hertz, which is the sound frequency of a human being, okay, human beings, their frequency is 432 hertz. So 432 hertz and the Om chants converts into the Sri Yantra symbol.
Wow.
So every human being is 432 hertz frequency. And if you take the 432 hertz frequency and you also play it into semantics in a tonoscope, you get the same shape.
Wow.
Okay, so the thing is that Om is a cosmic bubble of sacred geometry, and everyone is energy, and they're the master of their own reality.
Takes me back to, in the beginning was the word, the vibration, right?
Just play the sound.
Yeah.
Play the sound. I didn't put this in this one because it's in another book, my other mandalas book, but all music has its own frequency, and even the math of pi has its own song. It actually has notes that you can play for pi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so pi has its own orchestra for pi. So even you could think about creation through math, you could think about it through art, you could think about it through images. It's all going to translate to be the same thing. For a human body,
Yeah.
translates to the frequency of 432 hertz, translates to the Sri Yantra, translates to Flower of Life. I mean, there's so many different ways to see the same thing.
Yeah.
We all just creating different versions of how we see the reality, the same reality, and appreciate the same reality. So, anyways, people are energy orbs. People are
Yeah.
mandalas.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I hope you get into that point where you're seeing all the connections. So
Yeah.
before I explain this image a little bit further, so researchers in semantics research found that by playing different frequencies in the form of hertz in a sound plate, it creates a sacred geometry pattern that looks like mandala. And the sound frequencies are measured in the form of hertz. So a German physicist, Heinrich Rudolf Hertz, discovered that in 1887 through radio waves, receivers in electromagnetic waves through his research. And in honor of his lifetime of work, a measurement of one cycle per second is revered as a hertz. So the Schumann resonance again is for Earth, for her changes in frequencies is also measured in hertz as well. So you might have heard hertz in that way. But each cycle of hertz are standing waves that are the flow of sine waves reflecting back at each other, which look like multiple lines of Vesica Pisces. Okay, so hertz look like Vesica Pisces, even in radio waves. And then Brian Collins, which is another researcher, he wrote an article on the importance of 432 hertz in music. And he found that playing, again, 432 hertz to someone will harmonize the emotions of their body. So just listening to the sound of you at 432 hertz will harmonize your bipolarness. Will harmonize your body because you're hearing your own heartbeat.
Right.
So it will help calm yourself. And then the other thing also is further research that is done on the frequency of 432 hertz, as explored by the article Harmonic Mandalas from the Human Voice by John Stewart Reed and Eric Larson. John Stewart Reed, who is an acoustic scientist working in the UK laboratory, and Eric Larson, which is a US based design engineer, discovered that 432 hertz is the frequency of the human voice. Okay, so our voice is 432 hertz. So this engineering duo developed a sophisticated simoscope for semantics that can take anyone's voice and show the sacred geometric pattern unique to your voice DNA. Okay, and so the mandalas of each human being are unique to them, like a fingerprint, and it shows their complete energetic DNA blueprint in sound. So it's like the genetic code in relation to sound. So both men found that their research using a electronic simoscope that everyone vibrates at 432 hertz. Everybody on Earth. You want to make a human being, play 432 hertz. You'll make Eva out of sand. The sacred geometry mandala that is displayed in a simoscope from the frequency emitted into the tonoscope from the voice of each person has slight differences which make them unique to one another. So there are no two people alike, even if they're identical twins. Their voice signature is different, just like the fingerprints will be different too. So what the simoscope tool that was created to show what the sound of any frequency played at it looks like in three-dimensional terms is that sound does not travel like waves. So what they originally thought was sound and thoughts and words travel through waves, that's not true. What they really found is that sound travels in bubbles, like mandalas. So in the article Harmonic Voice Mandalas by Simoscope, the creators of that tool that they use in science and medicine and other things, is that your voice is a holographic representation of all that you are. and it contains all aspects of your energetic field. So despite what is taught in schools and colleges all around sound, and that all the sounds around you travel to your ears as they travel as beautiful holographic bubbles, not waves. So sound waves don't actually exist. The model is just a mathematical formula. What really exists is bubbles, like like thought forms, like the things
Right.
you say create a bubble. The things you think create a bubble. You are a bubble. So what they found, again, so if you look at this picture here, okay, you can go to that wonderful website. You can record your 432 hertz human voice, and they will send you what the tool says your voice DNA harmonic frequency looks like. And there are no two alike. And so it actually looks like a sphere. And
Oh
when they
wow! So you can do it for free?
I think it's $100,
Oh, okay, okay.
$150. But there's actually a $10 app that you can download from CymaScope, and you can see the mandala for music.
Hmm.
For you can kind of play with it. You can see because everything's a mandala basically. Everything's
Right.
an orb. So you and I have a holographic image. The world has a holographic image, but truly, we're just all mandalas.
Hmm.
We're just all energy orbs. And what they found is when they took the image of the mandala and turned it into a 3D structure, and then they cut it in half, then you can see what you have on the bottom right there, which is your unique mandala. This is your unique Metatron's cube.
Wow.
Everybody has a unique sacred geometry structure to them. And as they evolve in their consciousness and energy, it will also evolve the pattern.
Very
Okay.
cool.
And the interesting thing also, if you go to that website, is there's a lot of couples that will get a couples mandala. And when you look at the couples, a lot of the couples have been together for a very long time, and they go and they get the voice mandala to see what their mandala looks like.
Yeah.
Um, they have very similar mandalas. So even in their voice DNA, they are very similar in
It'd
their
be interesting
energy.
to like do like a couple when they first get married, and then after like 20 or 30 years,
Yeah.
some of these people, because couples will begin to look like each other and
Oh
share
yeah.
mannerisms and stuff because they just they're around each other so much. So that'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see how it affected everyone's individual, uh,
Yeah.
unique design.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how families,
Yeah.
family clusters, like what are all your mandalas for this family? Like you can almost take a look at a cluster of mandalas from a family or a couple, um, and kind of play, puzzle and put it together, and you can like
Yeah.
line because they all start looking alike. Well, this is a family mandala. This mandala family looks like this. This mandala family looks like that, and you can actually see by just looking at the mandalas how intricate the mandalas are. You can see how complex and how much energy they are.
Is that the future? Do we have a future instead of going to Olin Mills to have your family photo taken? You'll go and you'll just get everybody's orb. You have an orb family picture. This is what our orbs are. Can you
Yeah, this
guess
is
who's who?
this is my orb before the meditation retreat, and this is my orb after the meditation retreat. I have evolved.
Exactly.
I have
Absolutely.
more intricacy now.
Right.
I think my energy is much higher, whatever.
Yeah.
So it'll be funny, but this is the future. If you want to see yourself in a spiritual way,
Yeah.
you can also see your energy level
Hmm.
based off of CymaScope research in your mandala. So you can have one taken now and then check in on how you're evolving 10 years later and see how your mandala has evolved.
Right.
Have you changed? Have you grown? You can
Right.
see it also. So even in science, you can't lie to yourself.
Right.
So let's go on to the next one. All right. So remember that image in many slides ago of I think it was Ezekiel,
Hmm.
where he was communicating with a teacher in a bubble
Right.
in the sky. Okay, and then there's the wheel within the wheels.
Hmm.
Okay, so um, in in Asia, and it's been going on for a long time because most of Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism from the old 13,000-year-old Vedas of
Mm-hmm.
Hindu. Which again, they don't know the origin of the Vedas because it goes so far back, but they speculate from the Buddhist folklores that they come from the mythical land of Lemuria.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, here's beautiful Kuan Yin, the famous female Buddha, and there are other female Buddha teachers as well who have reached enlightenment. But you can reach enlightenment, and then you can come back if you want to. You can go back. You can come back. You know, you're infinite. You can go in the void, hang out for infinity, come back for the ascension. You know, whatever. Help people do your bit, whatever.
Right.
So, you know, it's all up however you want to play it. But Kuan Yin always likes to come back and help people. And oftentimes, if you look at the image, there's her halo around her head, and there's her bubble that she's traveling in. It's the bubble that she's traveling in.
Yeah.
That's her mandala. Okay. Now you see on the right is a Zen Buddhist monk who's meditating, and the picture is a very sacred picture to Zen Buddhists and that philosophy. And it looks like a zero, but it's actually a nice round sphere. And in Zen Buddhism, that is what they call an enso. Okay, so my ENSO. So an enso is a spherical vessel that a master teacher travels in. Okay, so the image you see of Kuan Yin in her bubble, her very magnificent bubble, traveling different parallel realities, that would be an enso. And
Okay.
the image that you had in previous slides earlier of Ezekiel communicating with a master or a spiritual being from heaven in a bubble
Mm-hmm.
would be an enso.
Okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's your halo around your body. So a couple things about this. In Chinese cosmology, the universe itself is created out of primary chaos from material energy, organized into the cycles of yin and yang, and it's formed into objects and lives. So yin is receptive and yang is the active principle. So in short, remember that the yin yang symbol means the balance of opposites, which gives opportunity for new expressions or creations that rise out of dualistic forces of opposing energy. So yin and yang. What's the yin and yang starting to look like, people? The Vesica
Right.
Pisces. The Vesica Pisces all around us here, yin and
That's true. It's
yang.
like swirling around,
It's
isn't
like
it? Yeah.
swirling around. You're in a bubble. You're in a Sri Yantra. You're in a Flower Life Orb. You're in a Merkaba, whatever name you want to call it. You're in an Enso. And there's like that physicist who found that from studying the Sri Yantra and sacred geometry, there's a vortex inside you at the intersection, part of your heart. And if
Mm-hmm.
you look from the top down, and then there's this swirl of yin yang, it looks like the yin yang.
Right.
Okay, so we'll get into yin yang, all the same stuff. But so according to acupuncture massage college, the yin yang symbol of dark and light opposing energies is used in traditional Chinese medicine as a model of diagnosing and treating illnesses. So the symbol first cropped up in the Chinese Book of Changes, the I Ching, around 700 BCE. And then with regards to the I Ching, the ancient Book of Changes, it is too designed much like the Sri Yantra and the Flower of Life, with its 64 markers, like the 64 intersecting points of the Sri Yantra and the Flower of Life symbols. So again, the Buddhist master teacher Nagarjuna, the founder of Mahamaka school of Mahayana Buddhism, which is popular in Tibet. They often practice in Tibet and India. They revere the zero symbol. So in Indian numeric system, which is what we use for the numeric system, is came from India, the zero. Okay. There's a spiritual element to the zero. Okay. And I mean, mathematics is just spiritual. So in Mahayana Buddhism in Tibet, they say that whenever he is taught, the master often appears in a luminous circle in order to reveal the true form of Buddha nature. Okay. So you start getting really up in levels of consciousness, and your teachers are probably not going to be in church. Sorry, people. you're on your own.
Whoops.
So you're at a level that like is probably not going to be able to organize anything. So
But Jesus told us we would do the things he did in greater and stuff. So it's time for us to step into our roles as avatars.
step into yourself.
Yeah.
Step into yourself. But anyways, so like in the Indian numeric system where zero is the beginning point, like infinity, the zero in infinity is the beginning point, and then when you step out of it, you take one step out, and then you take two steps out, and you go further into reality. So that's kind of like the spiritual nature of the number system. So, but it starts out with an end zone. It starts out from the zero or the sphere that encapsulates your master teacher, which you are as well.
That's interesting because that actually reminds me of, when I think it was the Law of One that was talking about in the beginning. There was the first thought, the first initial circle, the 0 point, right? And as it got to the edge of its existence, it created a new bubble, and then as it works around, that's the flower of life. That's why we see it that way, right?
Yep. Nothing's new underneath the sun. We're just rediscovering the same old.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get through this. We're almost done with the slides, people. So so now we get to the yin yang symbol. Okay, the yin yang symbol. Here's a beautiful yin yang symbol. So let's explain the yin yang symbol. The yin yang symbol is the torus vortex. It's a vortex in science. They found this out in
I
science.
never noticed that. It's like a side view of a vortex, of a what do you call it, toroidal field. It's like you're seeing through
Yeah.
the donut of it.
So study this. I'm gonna give you some scientific evidence behind this. Okay.
Yeah.
So Randy Powell, he's a student mathematician, or was at one time, and now he's obviously into his career. But he studied under Marco Rodin, he was fascinated with the analytics of vortex math. Like there's a math in studying vortexes. And what Randy Powell did was take the vortex map, and then he mapped it out. And he saw that it painted a picture through math of a torus vortex, which he called Abda or Abha torus vortex. And he found out that by carrying on with the math formula, it ended up creating a torus field, or like a donut. He just kept on carrying out the math on paper. And the more he started doing the vortex math, the more wherever he would put the next answer, it was like he was making a jigsaw, and he created a donut shape. Okay, that was based off of the math. If you look closer into the donut shape, you'll see 1 and 4 and 2 and 7. That's the vortex math. And so he's just carrying out basic mathematical equations, following the form, and it came up with this donut. Okay, so there's art in math. The universe is very creative, find lots of different ways to represent itself. And so so he goes over his calculations and depictions in his presentation, Intro to Vortex Math, which I think he still does. And in terms of the mathematical proportions of the torus vortex, it has the golden ratio. It has the math of the Sri Yantra. It has the mathematics of all sacred geometry. Doesn't matter the form that you want to look into. It has it all. So the physicist, again, the quantum physicist Nassim Haramein, he discovered that a toroidal field in any living being also has a double torus. So the description of a big torus vortex broken down is actually two smaller apple-shaped vortexes that has an axis point connecting to the two apple-shaped toruses together in a scientific understanding of the same two circles that make up the Merkaba or mandala. So every person has a vortex inside them, according to science, that functions like and has the energy of a black hole. Okay, so much like a Mandelbrot set, sacred geometry is mirroring larger versions of itself, and the interpretation that we we are smaller versions of the universal one mind, and all reside inside the consciousness of the universal one mind, having our own individual experiences. Okay, so that's what Nassim found in his research. So let me explain this in basic. Um, so, like I said, uh, like Nassim, when you study vortexes and black holes, which is what he does as a scientist, it creates two apple shapes. So, like as you see in the field of the magnetic field of the heart and the magnetic field of the earth, it looks like an apple shape. So, what it is there's an apple shape on the top half of your body. Connected in the middle is where the black hole is, or where the vortex of your body is, and there's another apple shape on the bottom half of your body, and they kind of just kind of go around like each other like this. Okay, kind of like a two whirlpools or toroidal fields that go around like this. This is kind of how vortexes and black holes work. Well,
Mm-hmm.
your body creates that is in terms of energy, and when you look again at the top view, this pattern is the yin yang symbol. It's the yin yang symbol. Okay. And so when you look at this picture more in detail, so again, the heart creates this very high toroidal field of energy, which is, if you remember the Buddhist mandalas, you have the huge aura around the body. That's your heart field. Okay. And then you also have a small one in your brain as well. The earth is also built very much the same way like everybody else, with sacred geometry. So the earth has a magnetic field,
Mm-hmm.
much like sacred geometry. And if you look at the bottom right there, um, you know what they do is, if you take a look at the vortex math and all those intersection points, let's say those are basically Vesica Pisces, two intersecting circles, and you do it over and over again, and that's the pattern of the torus vortex, the toroidal field that your body makes. It just, inside of the apple shape, the torus field or toroidal field of your body, inside of it is energy moving around. Okay, and that
Mm-hmm.
energy moving around looks much like this kind of a flower thing here. And if you take the intersection points of this flower donut and you just make the intersection points, you get the translation is the flower of life
Oh wow.
on the bottom right. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So everybody has a black hole inside them. That is what propelling you from one parallel reality to another. Everybody has a vortex. They are their own vortex, and they have their own magnetic field that makes a mandala. And if you look from the top view down of your energy field, it'll look much like a yin yang symbol in motion.
Right.
Okay, so yin yang symbol is sacred geometry. This is
You
another
know
way.
what amazes me is that like the Heart Math Institute's research nowadays has shown that the toroidal field around the heart is way more powerful than the one around the mind. And we're looking at this artwork that's so old, and it's showing the smaller circle around the mind, and the bigger circle around the whole body is actually, you can see that the center of that is where the heart would be. So it's showing the energy field of the heart and the mind, and it's showing the proportions that the heart is much bigger and encompasses the whole body, the vessel that we're in. You know
Right,
what I mean?
you're gonna like this next slide.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm gonna quiz everybody. I'm gonna quiz you, Shane. Can you see the torus vortex in this mandala?
Oh, let's
Let's see.
see.
What you got? These are all different Buddhas. Buddhas is just a word for somebody who is awakened.
Well, it looks like. It looks like the torus is sideways. But am I looking for one that's should be? Because it looks like I'm looking down on a toroidal field on the top one, the bigger one, because it's almost like
Yeah,
you're seeing it.
they're trying to make a complex structure in
It looks
2D
3D
art.
though, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
it looks 3D because of the waviness of those.
yeah. So, as you see in all these different tinctures, you see everybody has
Yeah.
two circles in the toroidal field. So remember, your brain creates its own mandala, it creates its own field, and it
Right.
has two circles. In the study of black holes and vortexes, it actually moves in two apple-like patterns on one on top of each other,
Mm-hmm.
like two little apple-like, and then they just kind of swirl around. That's kind of how the function of a vortex field looks like. But that's why there's in this 2D representation in Buddhist mandalas, they always put two circle rings around the vortex. So you
I
have one
see.
around your head, and then you have an even larger one around your body.
Mm-hmm.
And the center is where the heart is.
Yeah.
The center of all mandalas are right where the heart is. It's right in front of us this whole time.
Right.
And they even have the energy. They have the energy waves that come out just to kind
Yeah.
of, just to kind of let you know it's
It's
energy and it's
radiating out. Yeah.
moving and it's radiating and it's moving in a pattern. So
Mm-hmm.
all of the classical teachers have the same mandala
That's
right
so
in front of
cool.
us. And we're getting closer to the end. Oh, this is going to be a controversial one.
Uh-oh.
The swastika in indigenous cultures.
Now,
Sorry.
wasn't this was something that was hijacked? Kind of like I got people that give me a hard time about the all sing item. Like, dude, it was around a long time before the elite was. And here again, this was what Hitler did some research and kind of brought back this ancient symbol that was around way before him, right?
hmm The swastika, um, a lot of Asians in Asian temples, like Hindu temples and Jainist temples and um, Buddhist temples, really, really have a hard time with the West um, continuing to carry on the legacy of it being a representation of Nazism. Because it does not mean that in Asia, they still use it for what it was actually revered to all through their history. So swastikas is very interesting because a swastika is it is two intersecting patterns that look like a cross, and they whirl and spin in a certain direction, and they actually represent the vortex, the torus
Mm,
vortex. Like the yin yang symbol is another version of the spinning of your vortexes of your Merkaba.
right.
If you look down from the top and you just pick up just the wave of it, it looks like a swastika turning around. It's
Okay.
just movement.
Right.
And so the swastika in Asia and in many indigenous cultures is an ancient symbol of abundance through awakening to the path of divine enlightenment
Mm-hmm.
within oneself, and it's timeless. And the swastika still holds its meaning of good fortune in
Mm-hmm.
many Asian religions and spiritual traditions. So in the Indian, it's an Indian word, Sanskrit word that's broken down into swa, SWA, that means higher self. And then asti, ASTI, means being. And then ka, KA, means self. So it is being with your higher self. That's the Sanskrit Indian meaning of the word swastika, is to be with your higher self, be awakened, be enlightened, move up the levels.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's still revered and means in Asia. And so according, again, being the higher self. The other thing also about the swastika history is that it shows up in the Indus Valley architecture or archaeology artifacts, and is believed to date as far back as 13,000 years ago to the last ice age melt or the mega flood. And the swastika is a symbol of Hinduism from the ancient Indian Vedic texts that goes eight, from 8,000 to 13,000 years ago is what they think it is, but they really don't know. It could be even older.
Mm-hmm.
And the Raj Veda in the four-part Vedas is believed to date as far back as, again, 7,000 years ago or longer. And the Indian astrology in the Rig Veda suggests that the texts may go as far back as 26,000 years ago. And the exact age, so as 26,000 is based on the cycles. of the solar system. And they have that pretty darn precise in that text of how to count the precessions of the solar system. And the exact age of the swastika is still unknown, as much of the history of the Vedas is lost in oral tradition. So again, if you want to understand that, if you take the Veda Vyasa, which is about 3,100 years ago, into the 4-part Sanskrit Vedic text that we have today, the Aryans were from India, and they were a civilization of enlightened beings such as Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, and Siddhartha Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautama, which is the first Buddha. And he was a prince who denounced his title to going to be a monk in Buddhism. He was the founder of Buddhism. He came from an Aryan Indian royal family. So, so the swastika is actually like a originally a Hindu, but it's also used in Buddhist and Jainist traditions as well. So it's just another version of sacred geometry. It's another version of the yin yang symbol. It's just the swirl that your vortex makes in your Merkaba. So according to Binpin Shah, in his article, swastika was used for Neolithic, Bronze, and Iron Age cultures, and it's probably origins of astrology. What he found in studying it was the first known archaeology was the Messene swastika. And the earliest swastika, again, was found in Ukraine in a carved figurine that dates back to 12,000 years ago. And again, one of the earliest known swastikas was a Neolithic culture in Southern Europe. But then another interesting thing that happened as well is that there are many uses for the symbol in pottery, but it also shows up 2600 BCE in the Maji Ayo culture in China, and 2700 BCE in the Minoan civilization. The symbol again shows up in 5000 BCE in Mesopotamia, and then in the modern Navajo Native American ceremony decors, they also use the swastika, and they have been using it for as long as they can remember in their spiritual ceremonies as well. So it's interesting that even Native American Navajos and even the Mayan Indians use the swastika as decoration in some of their ceremonies as well, if you go farther back. So it shows that there is some link between these indigenous cultures in the Americas and these indigenous cultures in the other parts of the world, like Asia and, the Fertile Crescent. And they go way back.
Do you know anything about the? Because I'm noticing at the bottom image, the third one over, where it's got two different emblems. They're both going opposite directions, though. And then I'm noticing up on the temple right above that, it's going to the left, which appears to be the opposite of the way the Germans did it. So the
Yeah.
reason I ask is because Alva's bringing up that the Germans had switched it to go the other direction.
Mm-hmm. You can use in Buddhism, you can turn it one way, you can turn it the other way. It's just another. They both mean good fortune. It's just another way of seeing good fortune. So I'm not exactly sure what the exact terminology, but it's both positive symbols, and you can turn it either way.
But once again, it's you can see it's naturally occurring there because it looks like they used, is it cymatics to create the emblem?
Wow, so yeah, crazy. If you look at the image, so if another thing that's interesting about the swastika too is in 2007, archaeologists in Kazakhstan found using Google Earth that they discovered 260 geoglyphs. One of them was a swastika that dated back to 8,000 years ago. So it's before the Nazca lines in Peru.
Wow.
Okay, and so they're 250 meters wide, and NASA was able to find them. And so now they're looking at how old are these symbols in the earth. They're larger than the Nazca lines in Kazakhstan. So and then of course the other thing also is for Native American tribes, I'll go through pictures in just a minute. For Native American tribes, the swastika, they don't call it the swastika, they call it whirling logs, like whirling logs. They call it whirling logs, and it's a, again, same meaning. It's abundance, prosperity, good luck. And it is a broken cross symbol, which to Native Americans represent the sun and the four directions and the four seasons. And according to Navajo stand paintings, the rotation cross is often depicted in their artwork as a marker of the energy of Yi, Y-E-I. So Yi spirits are deities in many Native American traditions, and we resemble highly evolved beings that come to teach them different lessons about life and how to live harmoniously. Okay, does this start to sound familiar? You know, this like master teacher with all this information and knowledge is coming through a whirling log. There's some kind of like Merkaba coming
Yep.
down. I'm going to teach you about farming, and then get out of your life because you bug me. That's how I feel sometimes. You guys just started to bug me. So, anyways, the Yi symbol is in for Navajo tribeswomen, and historian Melissa Cody. She wrote a lot about this, and it's a special kind of deity. And again, it's revered as a talking god, someone who speaks directly to humans and how to live harmoniously and live amongst the earth in peace. So Yi deities often provide some simple rules of behavior to conserve and only to use the things that you need to survive. So don't pilgrimage the earth for greedy needs. So that those are the messages of the Yi
Mhm.
spirits, and they're also known as grandparent spirits like Rainbow Kokopelli, which is a deity that commands the rainbows and gives beauty to all those in harmony. So what the Yi symbol, which is a swastika or whirling log, is what they call it in Native American traditions. That go all the way back to, I don't know, we don't really know how old Native Americans really are, but archaeologists believe that um, the information that we know came from the mound builders. So the mound builders were estimated to be about 3,500 BCE in the Great Lakes area of Ohio.
Mhm.
And the mound builders had, again, pyramidal type of structures. They had sacred geometry in their decorations, and so we don't know a lot about it. But the point is that this symbol is a very revered, precious symbol in Native American, Mayan, Asian spiritual traditions. It's not a Nazi symbol, and so in Asia, when they were going to have the Olympics in Japan, they were having a really hard time with Westerners going, you have to hide all of your swastika symbols all over your country. And they're like, how do we put a band-aid on all of our temples and all of our buildings and at our airports and everywhere? Because it's everywhere. It's like the
Right.
peace symbol is everywhere. How do you know there was a big thing, like people need to educate themselves and just let go of that horrible tradition of the Nazis because they don't own that symbol. It's old.
Right.
So that's the history behind the swastika. So let's go over these pictures really quick. So there is Chief William Neptune, um, of his tribe, and he adorns the symbol in ceremony. You have the Hindu symbol, the Hindu temple, and the Buddhist temple above there. This is the Indus Valley seals from, they estimate about 13,000 years ago that they found that had the swastika. You have northern Iran. They found that from about 3,200 years ago, and that's a necklace that has swastikas that some royal had. And then on the far right, okay, the swastika symbol is actually created in nature in what they call Faraday waves. Okay, so what are Faraday waves and why does nature create a swastika symbol naturally? So basically, Michael Faraday, he discovered that there are nonlinear standing waves that appear as liquids enclosed in a vibrational receptacle. So when the vibration frequency exceeds a critical value, the surface becomes unstable. Okay, and then when he found that fine-tuning the vibrational frequency and accelerating it does create diverse sets of symmetrical patterns. It starts creating these patterns in nature. And the other thing is it's natural in nature because alligators make these kind of like vibration patterns as mating calls, and they send these symbols on the water to other alligators to find mates.
No way.
Yeah. So
That's too
alligators
cool.
are sending swastikas from on the water doing whatever alligator sounds they make. They're making the alligator sounds, and it's sending these waves, these symbols in waves. And another alligator might go, "I like the O," and go, "Oh, I like you." Another alligator might go, "Ooh, I really like the radio wave symbols. You sound interesting. I go to you." And
Right.
another one might say, "I like the 3 bars. That's mine. That's my guy." So
Right.
alligators make these patterns on the water to call their mates. Okay, this is
You
their
know what's
this is their
interesting
mating
is
call.
because technically that's what we're doing when we talk, and we're sending out invisible waves, sound waves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's really not much different. It's just that we're able to see it on the water's surface a lot
Yep.
easier, I guess.
We're sending out our own vuju, our own,
You're right.
vibe,
Yeah.
I like the
Totally.
energy of that guy. I like her energy.
Right.
Same exact thing. It's this is Faraday waves are like in the animal kingdom, their pickup line.
Right.
So swastikas are are natural in nature. They are not man-made creations. So Hitler did not come up with it. Okay, next. And we're almost to the finish line, people. It's gonna all come together if it hasn't already. Meditation changes reality. So meditation and gamma. And I've talked about this before. And basically, this is what they found. As you study that, you'll understand it as well. So in the Journal of Conflict Resolution, published by the International Peace Project in the Middle East, the effects of the Maharishi technology of the unified field, um, in 1988. What they found that in a 1968 study of the Maharishi effect, which is the yogi that lectured with Buckminster Fuller in many of the earlier slides. So what they found is that when people meditate, and they meditated at high frequency together on a certain outcome, what they found in over 60 studies doing this meditation over and over again, in different areas like DC and other places, what they found is that the crime rate stopped, active wars stopped during that time frame. And what they found is that the mathematical formula that came from such experiments showed that 1% of any population all over the world is all that is needed to create the energy of positive, loving change in our holographic physical reality. So, after 60 studies, they decided to do it again. So John Hagelin, who talked about transcendental meditation, he did it again in DC. And because DC is very crime ridden, and in the summer months when it's really hot is when the crime rates go up. And so they did it with 4,000 participants. And at the end, and they did it with the University of Texas, Temple University, University of Maryland, all these federal agencies, all these participants that came through. So out of 4,000 participants meditating at the same time, focusing on, positivity, and a positive outcome for the city, there was they predicted a 20% drop in crime, and what they actually achieved was a 25% drop in crime at the time. Okay.
Wow.
And what they found that is that days when the numbers of meditators were the largest, the levels of conflict reduced by about 80% overall. And I actually tried this. There was a worldwide meditation, I think a couple weeks ago.
And the fourth.
For
Four
yeah,
four.
for the COVID pandemic. The very next day, the numbers change. The numbers change of we've meet the peak and we're coming down, and we're gonna get down, and it's gonna accelerate. The very next day, the numbers changed that night, but it
Right.
wasn't reported until the very next day on the news after the worldwide meditation. So, you can do this research over and over again. It always is the same thing. What's happening and what they found in meditation research is that 99% of the world's population is going to respond to 1% of the high frequency individuals. Okay. That 1% are the dreamers. They are the ones shaping reality. Everyone else, sorry, not to sound kind of kind of mean, it's just sheeple. Sorry. But you can get there too. But that's all it takes, 1%. So Earth only really needs 1% of humanity to get into the fifth dimension, and then everybody else at whatever level you're at is going to get pulled by the storm. So,
Right.
there's going to
It's
be
kind of like a
people.
big ship, and you have a small group, a rudder, so to speak, that's sort of guiding the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And and again, they're just focusing on just connecting to universal one mind and connecting to the universe, just kind of focusing on positive things. And so the other thing that they noticed too when they were studying, because they studied many, many thousands, over 60, 70, hundreds of meditation research, they always find the same numbers, the same thing, is that many people get into like alpha, which is a certain level of frequency. And in alpha, you can reset your own program. You can reset your DNA. You can start making goals. You can change, like, I don't want to smoke or whatever. Or I want to start working out. You can change your own programming in alpha in meditation. Some people got into the highest frequency, which they found out that there was another frequency in the brain, another brainwave, which they call gamma, and they found that out in the 80s. But what they found is very few normal people who do meditation get to gamma. But when they started to, there was a surge about 20 years ago when I got into this research, when I was following a lot of Buddhist monks going into this research, offering themselves to get meditation and consciousness and mindfulness into the fold. What they found in all of these Buddhists and Christian and different monks of different religions, many of them were Buddhists, what they found in putting an EEG test or thing on their head and then having them do the meditation is that monks and nuns typically, for the most part, get into gamma. They get into gamma and they stay into gamma for a very long time. So on the image on the right, you have different types of meditation practices, and in vipassani, which is a type of meditation that you could do, many people get into alpha, and their brain wave is 7 to 11 hertz. But in gamma, on all of these different types of meditation, and there's so many different types of meditation, doesn't really matter. But when you get into gamma meditation, your brain wave frequency is 60 to 110 hertz. So whenever, like, let's take an example um, of the Schumann resonance. When the earth goes into these high hertz gamma frequencies, if you're not at that level, it's going to suck for you.
Right.
Okay. So meditate, do art, listen to music, go for a walk, just get into your groove and stuff, because it's going to be much more easy for you and much more pleasant riding through the storm and riding through the process of getting into a higher dimension with earth. If you're living in gamma, if you're living in a meditative state, if you have that higher frequency vibe all the time, or try to most of the time. Otherwise, you can be pulled by the storm and just struggle the whole time you're getting yanked by the storm. So you can ride it how you want to, and there's, again, no right or wrong way to travel between different parallel realities. It's just, what do you want to do next? So this is what they found in meditation, is that when you're in gamma frequency, you have very high visualization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're seeing images more vividly, you have more lucid dreams, everything is much more vivid, much more crisp. You have a clearer picture quality in your
Mm-hmm.
brain. And because we're all consciousness and we're all energy orbs, you are creating a more crisp, higher version reality.
Mm.
Okay, so it's really
Yeah.
important to get into gamma. So you want to change the world? Meditate, get into gamma, radiate at a higher frequency, work on your level of consciousness. That is going to change the world more than anything.
And we even talked about it, I think, the last time you were on now, with the energies being so high, we can actually achieve these higher levels much easier without all of the years and years of meditating, because now it's like you're just going with the flow rather than trying to go against, whatever the planetary frequency is. Now that the
Yeah.
frequency of the planet's raising, we can just ride that, right?
Yeah, just ride the wave. Just ride the
Yeah.
wave. Just ride the wave.
Ride the
Um,
wave.
yeah, we go to the next one. We're almost there, people. So there isn't very many tools that we have now to measure the energy level of people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in the earlier slide, I showed the semantics where you can go and get your voice mandala, your mandala printed out. You can
Mm-hmm.
see your mandala, but that's just to see what it is. But you don't know what level that is. So not that it really matters too much, but the only thing that we have so far to date that I know of in 20 years of research is kinesiology, and Dr. David R. Hawkins, a very top mental health professional. He spent his whole life on mental health and understanding consciousness. And he used kinesiology to measure and create the map of consciousness. Okay. And very fascinating guy. And his map of consciousness was so spot on against the science of different things that it just continues to be the only thing that we have so far to measure the energy level of different teachers. So you want to know what your bishop radiates at? Measure their energy. Not so good, find another church. So you want to know what this doctor measures at? Do the kinesiology test. Not so integrous, get a second opinion. You want to know what this politician measures at before you vote? Less of two evils, find the one that's going to be at a higher frequency than the other. I mean, you can just use, and he did this his whole life, where he did thousands of calibrations on different things just to see. And the things that are really notable that he found, he was so good at doing this. um, it, so so many Buddhist monasteries would consult with Dr. Hawkins to measure the energy field of Toku children, such as the Karmapa, which is the predecessor of the Dalai Lama. He's retiring, and the Karmapa is the person who's stepping into his shoes to work with academia and continue the work of consciousness research in academia, so we can know more. So, but when he was alive, he measured the Karmapa's energy to be very, very high. And you know what what happens is monks would in Buddhism, they would do meditation and get into the gamma frequency, and they would try to geolocate um, the reincarnation of a former high frequency spiritual monk. Okay, so some notable Toku monks of the past was Yeshua, or in the West you would call Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different than the West, because the West doesn't quite understand energy of people and consciousness level. Everything's very surface level. But
Mm-hmm.
in Buddhism, they understand, because they have been looking at the end souls and the teachers of different levels based on their energy and their Merkaba strength, and how large it is. They've been seeing through with the third eye, and through meditation. And they don't do any kind of democratic voting. Like, you can try to be the next Dalai Lama and do all the politics you want to, but you're not going to get the vote. The person who's going to get appointed is the person that they measure that has the highest level of energy and consciousness, the highest vibrating individual that they can geolocate based on their meditation. And when Dr. Hawkins came about with the map of consciousness and his research, they used his method and had him measure to make sure that the people that they geolocated as their spiritual teachers was of good calibration. So that's an interesting thing about Dr. Hawkins' work and calibrating people. So, like, the Dalai Lama had to be calibrated, Karmapa had to be calibrated, everybody has to be calibrated. So you just aren't good enough. We're gonna find somebody that's higher residence. Sorry. Still a student, still a student. so,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting. It's a different way of living, but that's how they have created, like, the Tibetan monastery has been around for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. That's how they have kept these monasteries functioning, for thousands of years, is because they've brought on leadership that have high energy. So the other thing that you want to notate about Dr. Hawkins' work is that in order to have accurate results, two people who conduct the kinesiology test must radiate at 200 level of energy or above. So they must have integrity. And only 15 to 20% of the world's population currently reside at that level, according to Dr. Hawkins when he was alive. And it probably hasn't changed that much. So kind of the 80-20 rule. And the other thing that he found is that locations like cities and counties and states and countries, they all have unique frequencies. So just like humans are 432 hertz, that's unique to a human. Like a monkey's not going to be 432 hertz, and a frog's not going to be 432 hertz, but a human will. Locations also have its own frequency. So it can be explored that locations, remember those vortexes in the different access points of the ley lines on the earth?
Right.
Those have unique signatures and they have unique frequencies. So it's something to be investigated. And this is what he found in his lifetime of research, is that locations have frequencies that are unique to them, and they function much like longitude and latitude. Okay, so if you're interested in vortex science and working with Earth's ley lines and access points to maybe try to find some way to travel between vortexes, it's speculated, but according to the map of consciousness, it is real. According to ley line and dowsing and that science, they exist. We just don't know how to turn it into material things. It would probably get rid of the travel industry. so,
Right.
so um
Well, that's exactly how some of these higher level beings' ships work. They have, since every location and not only three dimensional space, but also time, all four dimensions have a frequency. They can just move from one spot to the other just by changing the resonance of their ship, and it's
yep.
like instantly
Yep.
there.
And
Yeah.
that's the same concept too. When you look at the map of consciousness, I mean, he's barely touching on it. The work is wonderful, but the work is so wonderful that Buddhist monasteries use him to find the next Karmapa, to find the next Dalai Lama. That's
Right.
that's a pretty big reference.
Well,
That's
they
a pretty
actually
big
say that they
credit.
use technology to do this, but we actually have this ability with our Merkaba to do this. They just
Yeah.
use technology to make it easier, but we all have this ability. We just don't know how to access it, I guess.
Yeah, so when you raise your frequency or you lower your frequency based on your perspective on things and your inner work, you're changing your frequency, and when you change your frequency, that black hole inside you is popping you into a new reality.
Mm.
Okay, so once you understand it, it's going to be, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So again, we're down to awakening and ascension. So what do you want to manifest next? It really comes down to this. There's really no right or wrong way to jump between realities. You may jump into a reality that sucks. You may jump into a reality that's pretty good. Whatever. It's all a journey. You're infinite. So, the definition of a Buddha is one who is awakened, somebody who realizes that they exist in a holographic reality and they're responding to the commands of his user. And again, ascension, like I've always said, is raising your energetic frequency by living the best version of you. And as a result, you positively affect yourself and those around you, and your inner bliss manifests a parallel reality that matches you. So, I have outcomes for how I want to experience certain events, and it may not be agreeable to other people. And that's fine. I don't really care. You experience your reality, I'll experience my reality.
Mm.
But because there's no right or wrong way to experience reality. It's just like there's no right or wrong way to get to work, but everybody will have a different experience based on
Right.
how they want to travel. And that's the same thing. I will use my Merkaba to travel between realities a certain way, and if it doesn't agree with you, that's totally fine. I will go my way and you go your way. safe journeys. So each time you change your perspective on a subject of any kind, you're likely going to experience a slight variation in your reality, which is a sign of traveling between parallel realities and parallel people and parallel events. Okay? It's very important because right now we're going through COVID 2019 and there are parallel outcomes. And there are I have come across parallel people during this event. And
Mm-hmm.
and we are, I mean, Jane Goodall is a great example that everybody can relate to. So your outcome for how you experience this event is probably going to be different for how somebody else's outcome. So we don't have to all agree on things because we're going to have the experience we want to have based on our decisions. So I just like a smooth ride.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I don't like a jumpy roller coaster, but some people like that. They like it, like they like to be tossed around and banged around and barely survive. You're my wild story. Oh my goodness. Some people like that, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I just, that gives me vertigo. So, again, being a conscious creator requires inner work and an external reality are agreed to reflections of what's inside. So, all that inner work is so boring. The spiritual life is actually quite boring. But paying your bills on time, going to work so you can, maintain sustenance for yourself and your family, working on your inner self, all these kind of things. They seem really boring, but you living at a higher frequency and being part of that 1% is actually helping the world better than the world knows. And it's been
Yeah.
proven in science. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so here's my picture of one of the Buddhist monasteries in Laos, where I am originally from. This is the Ban Hatse Kon Wat Buddhist temple my mother helps fund the renovation of. And you'll probably see some after you see this presentation. If you watch the whole presentation, there's the dragons, they're mythical 5D. I do find it quite interesting that there's quite a bit of people who are saying that they see small little dragons around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but that if you see the lion holding the ball,
Right.
there is the lion at the gates, holding the flower of life ball.
Right.
So we have a lot of the sacred geometry all around, and again, I've known this through studying art history and Buddhism and mysticism through my childhood upbringing of Buddhism, but I've had to wait 20 years to gather all the scientific information to show that all these sacred symbols in all of these traditions are the same thing. And it comes down to you are energy. You are all traveling in your own Merkaba, and your level of consciousness and your level of energy is going to parallel and send you to a reality that matches you. So travel safely and enjoy the ride.
Coming from the galactic travel agent.
Yeah, coming from the Galactic Travel Agent. Yeah. So a final message. I want to do a final message because I think this is the longest presentation, but it's worth it if you wanted to deep dive into sacred geometry in like 3 hours instead of spending so many years trying to learn it.
Yeah, and a
Um,
great teaser for the book that's coming out.
oh yeah, yeah. And then if you want to get more into the science, you can read all 400 pages. I'll geek you out. But the final message I always get, because I do QHHT sessions, and I am doing it now with my beautiful Seahawks mask, is from all the oversouls that come through in each session. They always say the same thing, and I compose it into this message that I want to leave your viewers with, which is, you've always been enough. Use the gifts and the resources all around you to create the life you want to experience, a life full of joy and love. And the spirit world will nudge you through synchronicity. You can do it.
Absolutely, that's a great message. And 20 years, but you can see how it all lined up for this perfect time of now when we really need to begin to understand how the energies work and all of this. So
Yeah.
excellent.
Well, I mean, I want to say also with the my husband's grandmother told me about her going through the polio epidemic in the early 1900s and going through the Spanish flu with her mother. And, you know, the way I see it is that I have front row tickets with my popcorn and my mask to the greatest freak show on earth. So, so I'm going to enjoy the freak show and see what happens. So I don't
Absolutely.
know.
I've been telling people, snap some shots because this is like history in the making. I mean,
You're
I'm
watching,
going.
yeah, you're
This
watching a
is
pandemic during the age of the internet. Well, that's going to be
right.
interesting.
Right. It's like we don't realize how cool it is that we're alive at this time. And it's easy to get focused on the negative stuff and to miss all the exciting things. People are waking up. This is a huge catalyst for people. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
easy to focus on the negative, but people are waking up. People finally have time to get on and watch a video and learn about some stuff. So
yeah,
it's working out to the good.
yeah. I heard something somebody said, and I really agreed with it. It's like Earth's they put us all in timeout, and everybody's been sent to their room to think about things.
That's so true.
You go stay in your room and you think about it.
And it's so funny because a lot of the people in our community have been in their room. They haven't wanted to come out. Now they're like, oh, everybody's in their room. I think I'll come out and look around while everybody's home. Right?
Right. So it's been funny. So we'll get through this. Get through this, and the next time something impactful, like worldwide. I mean, we're going through it as a world. I mean, talk about unity consciousness, and I mean, this is pushing people in new ways that they've never done before.
Right. It's
It's like
challenging people.
it's
Yeah.
challenging people. I
Yeah.
mean, you're being pulled by the storm.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I
Well,
wish
if you can't
everybody the
come on,
best.
I'd love to have you back when the book gets released. Like even if it's within the 5 days, we can have a big, book release party or something, and that'd give the viewers an opportunity to go nab it up in the first 5 days or whatever. Or you can just let me know when it's out, and I can put a post out so people know that go grab it or that it's
Yeah.
available now.
Yeah,
No rush, divine timing. You know
yeah,
that.
I will definitely send it to you guys during the 5 day promo so everybody can download it for free and read it. And I always again promote it on Facebook, and I'm really delighted to see which countries get the most downloads and are reading through it. So it'd be interesting to see how the world responds to a free book on exploring parallel realities using sacred geometry.
Right.
So yeah, when I release my book, um, what is it? What's my book? I wrote so many books. Yeah, so when I release my book, Buddhist Guide to Parallel Realities, using the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Paths, I sent it out around the world, boosted it on Facebook, and it got downloaded by like 50,000 people, 50 to 70,000 people. So, it went around. I don't really care. If the information helps, it helps, and that's good.
Right.
So, and then I fall back into behind the curtain and carry on with my life.
But of course, you're a QHHT practitioner, so anybody in the Seattle, Washington area can look you up and you'll wear a mask.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
no worries there.
yeah. I definitely would be happy to come back again. And we could talk about whatever the universe wants us to talk about at that time.
Perfect. Well, excellent. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around with us. I can't believe it. Most people have been here most of the time, and we're
Oh,
right
really?
coming up on 3 hours.
How many people were in there?
We got 39 right now, but it's been
Oh,
fluctuating 40 to 50 to 60, something like that, I think.
for sticking around for a 3 hour presentation of sacred geometry, I mean, that's
Right.
commitment. That's commitment to self.
It's a great group we got here.
Yeah,
they get it.
Yeah, you just committed to yourself like big time. I mean, you just saved yourself a lot of Sunday meetings.
Yeah, definitely. So. Well, we do have Von's links below to go get her book, to go to her website, to schedule a QHHT. Sorry, I'm used to BQA.
Yeah.
And there was another link to get your books. And let's see, your website actually, the Merkaba Chakras website, actually has links to everything else too. So if you don't have a way to write it down or you might forget about it, just go to merkabachakras.com. And that will link you to her YouTube and everything else. Somebody else was asking about your YouTube. link earlier, and it is in the description box below. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't notice it until later. Well, we'll definitely have Vaughn back here in a month or two when you got your book coming out, and we'll see how things are going here. A lot is happening right now. It's exciting times. So thank you so much, Vaughn.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Lots of love and light, you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Be sure to check out the website at uotf.net. There you will find the live stream schedule displayed in your local time right there on the front page. Below that, you'll find links to take the Beyond Quantum Healing course at a discounted rate, purchase our book, Mandela Effect, Friend or Foe, in paperback or ebook, or to contact me to schedule a BQH session. At the top of the site, you'll find links to help support the work I do, access the free private forum where you can discuss organizing get-togethers in your area, Mandela effects, and more. Thank you all so much for being here.